to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
You have to limit the damage when it's not going well. Like you can't go 7-8 games without getting a win. Like you just can't. Like the West is. But the one thing I will say about the West is that if you give yourself a chance, may not be division, but you know what? I think that there's a few. There are probably 5 or 6 teams, and I think the Blues are one of them. That if they can get on one of those runs, the opposite way, Alex, of what I said earlier, is that all of a sudden you could be battling for a playoff spot. So I think they're definitely a bubble team.
That was Eddie Olczyk, who was on with me for the Winter Classic, of course, TNT broadcaster and color analyst for the Seattle Kraken. So very understanding of what this Western Conference race is. And stop me if you've heard this one before, T-Bone. The Blues are entering a critical stretch of hockey.
Again?
Before they get to the Four Nations tournament.
I feel like that happens all the time with this team.
Yeah, it's rinse and repeat with this Blues team. With Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, we had to call him an emergency from the bullpen. BK's at home, sick with the family, so hopefully he'll be back with us tomorrow. Hopefully he's feeling a little bit better. But it is BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We are live up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Our studio cams are brought to you by the Air Alliance team. Blues back in action tonight, taking on the Vegas Golden Knights once again, and they're back at Enterprise Center this time. And this stretch continues from where we've said it a couple of games ago when they fell to Utah and they beat Vegas. It's picking up points and it's earning that opportunity. But T-Bone, I went and looked at this because the narrative with the Blues, at least I've heard from a lot of people, is they can't beat the bad teams and all they do is they beat the good teams. This is going to sound like BK here, so let me see if I can do my nerd with my glasses. That is factually incorrect. In fact, since Jim Montgomery has taken over this Blues team, they are legit a 500 team against playoff teams. Teams that are sitting in the playoffs currently, since Jim Montgomery took over on November 24th, the Blues are 4-4-1. Now I isolated this. I like to cherry pick this stat one for you, T-Bone. Pre that Buffalo Sabres loss, because that was the dud that missed out on another 3-game win streak against teams that weren't currently sitting in the playoffs. The Blues are 6-1-1. And then they lost to Buffalo, and then they went on a stretch beyond that Buffalo game against non-playoff teams, and they were 4-4. So overall, since Jim Montgomery has taken over, 10-5-1 against non-playoff teams. So it got me thinking, okay, you just wrapped up a 10-game stretch where you picked up 6 wins out of 10. You've got 8 more games prior to this Four Nations tournament, and then you've got about 6 games before the trade deadline. At what point, what needs to happen for this Blues team for fans to sit there and look at this and say, you know what, they might have something here? Because the Western Conference wildcard race is exactly what Eddie Olczyk just said. The Vancouver Canucks, 3 wins in their last 10. Utah, 4 wins in their last 10, albeit they're in a 2-game win streak. The Seattle Kraken seemingly are out of this one, but only 5 points behind the Blues. They've got 4 wins in their last 10. The difference between the Blues, Vancouver, and Utah is the Blues have yet to lose 3 consecutive games in regulation under Jim Montgomery. Vancouver's done it, Utah has done it, Seattle has done it. So they're doing everything that they seemingly need to do to keep themselves in this position without going on a win streak. So what am I missing?
That's a good question because I don't have the answer for that either. I think they're going to have to go on a run at some point because everybody else has done it, right? Everybody else in the National Hockey League is 1-3+.
You're right.
So, though it is a good thing you are avoiding some of those valleys, which I know was a big word for Army, what was it, 2 seasons ago when they would win 7, lose 7? Mm-hmm. You've done a good job of doing that, but you haven't really seen a high peak. And I don't think you can make the playoffs if you don't get beyond a 3-game winning streak. I think you're going to have to go on a 6-7 run, a 7-9 run. And though this is a tough stretch for the St. Louis Blues, I don't think it comes here. I think this stretch for them is more about avoiding the valleys that you were talking about, still avoiding those 3-game losing streaks because of these next 8 games that you've got coming up, 5 are against playoff teams, but 6 of these 8 games are at home. So you don't have to travel, and they've got this weird kind of stretch in the schedule. We kind of mentioned this offhand yesterday, but, they had 2 days off prior to this game. Next week they've got, I think,
3 days off.
3 days off between games. Like, there's no excuses for this Blues team. There is no back-to-back games that are really going to push this team over the limit. They don't have a back-to-back the rest of the way till the Four Nations, and in fact, they have all these off days in between. So the only reason I don't know if they can go on a run here is because they are going against playoff caliber teams. For me, it is, okay, got to do 500 at a minimum in this next 8-game stretch if you want to say, okay, we're in this thing once we get to the Four Nations break.
Yeah, and I think Joe Vitale, who's going to join us in about 20 minutes or so, but Joe Vitale told us, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, that, look, you want to be 6 games above 500 or more if you can prior to this Four Nations tournament. That puts you in a good position to succeed. Well, right now you're 2 games above 500. And if you're going to go down that math, we did this. It took us about 15 minutes in the office.
It did take us longer than it should have.
It totally should not have taken us this long. But with 8 games, you're talking about having to pick up 6 victories. And what that is, if you look at the 8 games, because this is how this Blues team goes, well, you've got 8. Let's say you win on Thursday. You win against Dallas. Then you probably lose against the Vancouver Canucks because it's a 3-game win streak. You win against Colorado. You win against Florida. You win against Edmonton. You probably lose against Utah. Whatever recipe needs to take place, you've got to find ways to go 600 in a 10-game stretch. If you go 600 in 10-game stretches the rest of the way, you're talking about 94 points. And I know nobody likes to hear this because it's not sexy. It's not fighting for a top 3 spot. But a 600-point percentage for how this wild card race is going probably puts you in a playoff spot. And that's the one thing that I noticed when I was looking at this. They've been doing that. They've been above 500 against non-playoff teams. They've been 500 against playoff teams. Overall, this team has played to that point percentage. The question is, can you keep it going? Because now you've got stretches against Edmonton, against Florida, against Winnipeg, against Colorado, against Vegas. These aren't just pushover teams, although the pushover teams they've struggled with.
That might be better for us.
But see, that's the thing. They're actually really good against these pushover teams. But people hear that and like, oh, well, you can't beat those teams. This is an odd season for an odd team that it feels like they're just trying to get some legs underneath them. And Vegas poses an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, especially because you get them. One, you just saw them, you beat them, and you played a really good game. And the other thing for the Vegas Golden Knights, you're meeting them at the right time, right? I think they've won 1 game in like their last 7, if I'm not mistaken.
They're on a 4-game losing streak, and I believe they're without William Karlsson tonight.
Yeah, he's supposed to be out tonight. So, like, you're running into the Vegas Golden Knights at the right time. Now it's a matter of, can you win this one? Build momentum coming off of that. Now, I think you're going to have to see in these next 8 games, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. They're still not going to have Thomas and Butch paired up together. Butch going to be on the third line tonight. Thomas going to center that second line. I think at some point in this 8-game stretch, you will go back to it. But when you do go back to it, it has to work, right? To me, the 2 guys that are so important in this 8-game stretch prior to the Four Nations break are Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. And that is a obvious, well, duh moment. But those guys haven't played well. I mean, they were the whole reason you lost the game at Utah, for just being completely honest. And that's what prevented the 3-game losing streak and led to that dud of a game. Those guys have to be your best players. It's been the theme of the season when we talked about coming in. Your best players, or the top paid players, need to be your best players. Yep. And so far this year, 2 of the 4 have been. Kyrou and Shen have been from the forward side. Booch has not been. Thomas, for the most part, has been, but is going through a lull. Those 2 guys are the key for them. If they're going to pick up, like you were saying, 6 of 8 in this stretch against very tough opponents, those 2 have to be the keys for them to get to that spot.
Yeah, with the exception of Utah, Vancouver, and Chicago, you're taking every single team, with the exception of those 3, that are a top 3 team in their division. So it's not going to be an easy path. And I would add on to the important things the guys need to be where you need to be, T-Bone. You need health. And that's the one thing that they avoided yesterday. Yeah. When we were on the air, I was Debbie down in there for a little bit, because if you missed it, Luke Korak and Jeremy Rutherford both tweeted out that at practice yesterday, Philip Broberg took a spill, and he had to be helped off of the ice, favoring that right leg. And if you remember correctly, back against the Toronto Maple Leafs, that right leg was the one that he fell, and Mitch Marner fell on top of him, and he was out for about a month. But the news came out today. Lou Korek, Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider, both at practice, and they said that Broberg was one of the second guys on. He was the second player on the ice. He skated the entire time, wasn't favoring anything, and then just moments ago, Jeremy tweeted out that per Jim Montgomery, Philip Broberg is a player tonight. T-Bone, I know this sounds Captain Obvious, but if they would have lost Philip Broberg for a significant amount of time, I would be having a different tone today. And I know Ryan Suter filled a really nice void for them when they had injuries earlier, and I know Nick Leddy's been skating with the team. All of that's gravy. But if you don't have one of your top four defensemen available for you in this next stretch, you would have been, for a lack of a better word, bleeped. Like, you cannot lose. You have to be healthy right now, and specifically defensively. How they're playing, the style they're playing, the offense that they're getting from their defensemen. They've got guys that have scored in 6 straight. You can't afford to lose Parayko, Fowler, or Broberg, in my opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, they got the best case scenario to where he's able to skate today and looks like he's going to play, or he is going to play tonight. Jim Montgomery confirmed that. But, yeah, they don't have the depth on defense to replace a Philip Broberg, a defensive-minded guy. Now, he does have some offensive upside, but you don't have anybody else that can really slot in and take over his defense, right? Pernovich, you can put him in. I think Pernovich has been good this season when he has been in the lineup, but he's not really that defensive presence, right? He doesn't fit what the Blues have been doing under Jim Montgomery. It's what Tyler Tucker's done so well. He's been very good defensively. He does have showed a little offensive upside here in a handful of games, but you're right. They couldn't replace a Philip Broberg if they lost him, and it would have been a serious conversation if he was out for a long period of time. All right, well, do the Blues then have to go back to that defensive market, which they've already shopped in once or twice before this, or once this season with Cam Fowler? Now you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Back on the ice, 100% with you. The most important thing for the St. Louis Blues is health for this final 8-game stretch before you get to the Four Nations break.
Well, and I also think bigger picture with this Philip Broberg news is good too. Like, I don't know if the Blues could have afforded a 23-year-old, and yes, he's young, yes, he could heal, but could have afforded the same injury to the same place on the same defenseman in about a 2-month difference. Like that. That's a dangerous thing to be playing around with, and obviously you would have had health. He's young. You hope he recovers from there. So all things pointing towards Philip Broberg being healthy, playing tonight, which is a great sign for the Blues. Jim Montgomery also mentioned that there will be no changes to the lineup with the exception of Joel Hofer in between the pipes. So we've got your pregame coverage. First Community Credit Union pregame at 6. Puck drop with Curbs and Joey at 7. Joey Vitale is going to join us at about 11:35 today. Plenty more to get into from 11 to 2 here on 101 ESPN. Also, you can get in on our text line, Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. We've also got the Graveyard, our YouTube chat at 101 ESPN STL. Coming up next, quarterbacks headed into this championship week. Which QB is under the most pressure this weekend? All three of us had the same answer, and it might surprise you. We'll get to that next here on 101 ESPN.
We want to hear from you. Use the Scott Lee Mic Drop feature on the 101 mobile app. Give us your opinion on anything St. Louis sports with a mic drop.
Brought to you by the Scott Lee Heating Company.
The SSM Health Golf Expo, January 31st through February 2nd. Tickets at stlgolfexpo.com.
ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Check out either the 101 mobile app or 101ESPN.com for your chance to win a signed puck autographed by Blues captain Braden Shen.
Shen shoots, he scores! Game winner! Bring out the Zamboni!
Get entered to win that Braden Shen signed puck right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Powered by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
So along with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario here on BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. And on the weekend, this Sunday, is championship weekend. By the way, we've got Champ Bash over at Hot Shots in Fenton. You can join the Fast Lane and the Riz Show from this Sunday at Hot Shots Fenton for Champ Bash. Our live pregame show with Anthony Stalter and Scott Rizzuto will start at 11 a.m. Get there early to grab your seat and enjoy the Hot Shots pregame tailgate specials from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. before kickoff. Plenty of screens to watch the AFC and NFC championship games and a bunch of giveaways throughout the day, including Blues tickets, Point Fest tickets, and more. Plus, Riz will perform their choreographed dance pick'em punishment at halftime of Game 1. So make sure you don't miss this year's Champ Bash with the Fast Lane and the Rizzuto Show at Hot Shots Fenton this Sunday. All the details can be found at 101ESPN.com. So you get the NFC in the afternoon and the AFC in the evening. And that's Mahomes and Allen part, 2 that we've seen these two in the championship game against each other. And we all know that Mahomes cheated his way to that victory. So we'll see if he does that once again. But then in the NFC one, you got Jaden Daniels, the rookie sensation, going against Jalen Hurts. And T-Bone brought this question up in the office. And I find it interesting that all three of us had the same answer. And I'm curious our text line's answer, Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. Which QB is under the most pressure this weekend? Because there's no pressure on Patrick Mahomes. There's no pressure on Jaden Daniels. So really it comes down to Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. And my answer was Jalen Hurts, without hesitation. I don't see any pressure on Josh Allen. To me, Josh Allen has gotten his team to this point that I don't know if anybody expected them to be here at the beginning of the season. Is there pressure on him to get over the hump? Absolutely. There's pressure on him to get to a Super Bowl. But it's not like at the end of this season, people are going to be saying, he couldn't get it done. They need to move on from Josh Allen. I think it's Jalen Hurts. And I don't know if anybody's saying move on from Jalen Hurts. But if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, or just a generic football fan, and you're looking at the Eagles and you lose to Jaden Daniels in the championship game, aren't you asking yourself, is Jalen Hurts really the guy that's going to get us to the next level? Yes, he got you there before, and I'm not discounting that at all. This is a different team, though. It's different. Different coordinators. You got a head coach that a little questionable at times. The path to a Super Bowl is Saquon Barkley. And if your team struggles and the other team figures out how to stop Saquon Barkley, I think there's tons of pressure on Jalen Hurts in terms of, I don't know if you're a quarterback that gets us to a Super Bowl like Allen, like Mahomes, or like Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of pressure on Jalen Hurts this weekend, and I think he is the guy for me that has the pressure. And I would understand the argument for Josh Allen, but for me with Jalen Hurts, it's kind of what you're talking about of, okay, Jalen Hurts got the Eagles to a Super Bowl, didn't win that Super Bowl. He did play great in that game, though. You know, I went back and looked at his playoff numbers from that run a couple seasons ago. He wasn't good in the playoffs until the Super Bowl.
Right.
And then in the Super Bowl, he ended up balling out. He's been terrible this postseason. Now, that Rams game, you deal with the elements, hurt his knee. But that is something to keep in the back of your mind when they go up against Washington is, okay, well, if Jalen Hurts isn't as mobile, we saw how that kind of affected Philadelphia's game planning and how it kind of took away the tush push from what they were able to do in that LA Rams game.
Right.
Jalen Hurts has not been good this year, and the passing game has looked off for the Philadelphia Eagles for a while. There is no excuse for their passing game to be as bad as it has been when they've got a great offensive line. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are good wide receivers, and Dallas Goedert is a solid tight end. Mm-hmm. There's no excuse for their passing game to be struggling the way that it is, and the reason that it is struggling is because of Jalen Hurts. So there's pressure on him to kind of, if they do shut down Barkley in this game, which I don't see coming, but let's just say they do, Hurts is going to have to be the guy that can lift them to that next level. But if he can't take his game to the next level, they're not going to beat anybody from the AFC. They can get to a Super Bowl, but there will be serious conversations about, okay, is Jalen Hurts a guy that can win you a Super Bowl? He's going to be a quarterback that can maybe get you there when the NFC is is weak compared to the AFC, where you've got the Allens, the Mahomes, the Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, the Justin Herberts.
Right.
Can he be the guy that can get you over the top and beat those guys? I think it's going to be a fair question if he doesn't play well this weekend against Washington.
Yeah, let's be quite candid about this. That Super Bowl performance, the ridiculous stat line, one of the best stat lines in modern Super Bowl times, that happened a while ago. And Tanner, you reiterated as much in the playoffs ever since. We understand last postseason, a total dud against Tampa Bay. And in the first 2 rounds this year, let's not forget, against Green Bay, that offense was completely out of sorts. Saquon Barkley should have received many more carries, much more action, and that one was closer than it should have been versus the Packers. Now, last week you put a certain degree, I think you do have to take stock of some of the extenuating weather circumstances, but the bottom line is that, as you stated, the rapport between quarterback and receivers simply hasn't been there, and it's not for lack of options in Philly, okay? When you have elite wide receivers, when you've got 2 guys on the outside who can take the top off of the opposing defense, you have to have a little more chemistry and more downfield connections than what Hurts has demonstrated so far. I do find myself, though, Alex, going back and forth on this a little bit the more I mull it over, because right here, right now, I think a lot of people would argue, and rightfully so, if Josh Allen doesn't have his breakthrough here in 25, this round in the playoffs. Lamar, he already took down Lamar, although that was clearly a collective effort on the part of the Bills last weekend. Mahomes and the Chiefs, the offense, relatively speaking, down pedestrian relative to recent seasons, okay? Allen has now taken Buffalo to 5 straight AFC East titles. The division has been there for the taking. What is your next step? If you don't get to the Super Bowl, where Hurts has already been, I don't know if that's exactly on the horizon for this unit moving forward. Taking nothing away from him, he broke through this year, and he did so without a surplus of weapons. It's been highly impressive, but that was the narrative for the first half of the season. Now, what do you do in the postseason? Both of these guys, frankly, have a ton to prove.
I don't disagree with you at all. Like, I think when it comes down to pressure, there is pressure on Josh Allen, because I think Bradford nailed it. Like, if you look at this Kansas City Chiefs team, this is the weakest they've been and might be the weakest they're going to be moving forward. Like, don't have Rashee Rice. Yes, they have their other receivers there, but Travis Kelce's getting older, although he does go into God mode into the playoffs. And defensively, I don't think they're as difficult as they've been in the past. So if you're Josh Allen, you've had the number 1 elite wide receiver in Stephon Diggs, and you couldn't get it done. You now are doing it with a collective group of players, and you've been as efficient as Josh Allen has been in his entire season. There has to be some questions afterwards that you sit there and say, when are we going to get it done? But that's kind of the whole Tom Brady era, right? To where I think there were a lot of teams in the AFC at the time of saying, like, when are we going to get this done? We're not going to get it done. So I don't put the same type of pressure on Josh Allen as I would with Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts, the NFC is wide open. Like, the NFC, like, as great as Jaden Daniels has been, the NFC is wide open. And your team has been dominant from start to finish. You've got a historic season by Saquon Barkley, a defense that's clicking on all cylinders. You've got 2 legit weapons at wide receiver, a really good tight end. What's your problem? Your problem's your quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I can't say the same thing for Buffalo. If they don't win, it won't be because of Josh Allen. It's going to be because of other areas that fault them. If the Eagles lose, it's going to be because of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's because all of the strengths on Philadelphia, all of the strengths around Jalen Hurts, Tanner, that's the thing, almost emphasize really what he has been lacking. You want to talk about the ground game, and I think for good reason earlier today, Saquon Barkley nominated as an Offensive Player of the Year. For all intents and purposes, he was the Offensive Player of the Year, especially among running backs, wide receivers, other skilled players. The offensive line hasn't missed that much of a beat despite missing Jason Kelce this season. You've got the options on the outside. So many of the advanced numbers and analytics stress that, as far as the point of contact before Barkley even gets to that second level, he's been given that much more runway. So everything is incumbent on Hurts to actually be able to take this team over the top. And then on the flip side, too, you mentioned it, there isn't maybe as much inherent pressure on Allen, but at the same time, he handed Kansas City, let's be honest, its only real loss of the season. That means nothing about a month or so ago unless you do it again at Arrowhead in the playoffs.
Let me ask you this, T-Bone, because somebody texted this on our Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. Disagree with no pressure on Patrick Mahomes. He's trying to do something that's never been done before. He doesn't do it this year. Chances he'll never get another shot at it. It's a different type of pressure, but do you feel like there's pressure on Patrick Mahomes?
I think there's a little bit of pressure because of what the texts are saying. I do agree with that to an extent. It is a different kind. But, yeah, I mean, Mahomes...
It's kind of like legacy pressure.
Yeah, he's probably never going to get a chance to do a three-peat again. You know, if they don't do it this year, the Chiefs were all in on it, right? They brought back Chris Jones. Kelsey's back for his run again.
Yeah.
Like, there probably will not be another three-peat opportunity for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah, I do agree to an extent there is pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Now, I don't think it's the most because I think Jalen Hurts is in that spot Jared Goff was with the Rams.
Yeah.
Right? Where you look at that roster and you're going, man, this roster's unbelievable around him. He's got the weapons on offense. The defense, as Bradford had mentioned, is really good. And then you look at it and go, okay, well, what's our weakest link? It's the quarterback.
Yep.
And what did the Rams do? The Rams said, we got to go find another quarterback. And they moved on from Goff and went out and got Matt Stafford. The Eagles kind of remind me of being in that spot right now, to where I look at them and I go, they've got the best pure talent left of any of the NFL playoff teams. Honestly, I think they had the best pure talent out of all the playoff teams when the playoffs got underway this season.
Yeah.
And then I watched Jalen Hurts play, and I go, man, these games shouldn't be this close. It shouldn't have been that close with the LA Rams.
Nope.
Now, some of that was the way Sirianni handled the end of that game against the Rams.
But you don't trust I guess you do trust your quarterback a little too much in that situation.
So maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's a coach and a
coach might be a
quarterback
problem, too.
Yeah. But that game against the Packers, right?
Yeah.
The Packers did not play well in that football game early on. And yet you went into halftime and everybody kept saying, well, the Packers are shooting themselves in the foot. The Packers are shooting themselves in the foot. And I look up and I go, well, the Packers are still in this football game, so what happened, right? If the Packers are supposedly shooting themselves in the foot, this should be over. The Eagles should have put this game away at halftime, and they didn't. And they ended up winning that game. But Jalen Hurts never put that kind of, as Army likes to say, take the knife and jam it through their brain and kill him.
Yep.
They never did that in that football game against the Packers. And why didn't they? Because Hurts was terrible in that football game.
Especially with the arm. It's all about the arm. And I do think the Mahomes angle is interesting, too, because don't discount for a second. We understand that a lot of the attention here is being focused on, rightfully so, Hurts and Allen for that matter. But Mahomes, much like Jordan, I will say, it's an easy comp. I understand it's an easy comparison, but he seems to have that knack, really, that propensity for being able to craft some narratives on his own, to be able to craft more motivation. He wasn't named as a Pro Bowler this season. He saw more of the headlines going to the guys with the more lofty offensive numbers. But really, in those situations, what has he classically done? He's been able to thrive even more. You think about last season, I would contend that last season, going into the playoffs even, that maybe the Chiefs' offense was operating at an even lesser speed, and yet you saw a different tenor, a different tone once the playoffs started. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he were to go out there and absolutely light it up against the Buffalo defense. But which team is going to have the final possession? It seems like that kind of setting.
Championship action this weekend, the NFC Championship. You can hear both actually on 101 ESPN. Pregame at 1 for the NFC, kickoff at 2, and then kickoff at 5:30 for the AFC Championship game. Coming up at 15 minutes, we'll get to questions and answers. You send us your questions, 314-399-9646. We'll get to those answers in a little bit. But coming up next, we'll catch up with our guy Joe Vitale, weekly hit to preview Blues and Golden Knights here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers back with you here with another jersey giveaway. This one is awesome. Jordan Kyrou signed jersey, the home blue, and it's a ladies cut. Nice, sleek, sharp. One you're going to love for your collection, and all you have to do is go to 101ESPN.com or visit 101 ESPN, the mobile app. Register now to win that one-of-a-kind signed Jordan Kyrou female jersey.
This is Tyler Tucker, and it's game day on your home, the Blues 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Broberg back on the ice. Good morning. I'm Bradford Bruns, and this SportsCenter update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last hour at Blues practice, defenseman Philip Broberg did make an appearance. Number 6 went down during yesterday's session. Jim Montgomery's note will once again battle Vegas tonight. Puck drop happening right after 7. NFL championship weekend awaits, but regular season MVP finalists are already known. Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, plus Jared Goff vie for that top honor. The SportsCenter update has been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Along with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario as we head now to our Collier and Thompson phone line. It's Thursday, which means it's our weekly hit with our favorite, the Blues analyst on the radio side. And, of course, you see him on FanDuel Sports Midwest. He is Joe Vitale. Joey! Welcome back home.
What's up, boys? How you guys doing today?
I'm good, buddy. How you doing? Welcome back to the frigid cold here in St. Louis. I hope you enjoyed the 50 degrees out in Vegas.
50 felt like 100, no doubt about it. Utah was great. Vegas was good. But, no, I am. I'm excited to be back here. A lot of home games coming up for this Blues team, and I know a lot of the Blues players, certainly with all the tough travels in the first half of the season, are looking forward to this kind of home little stretch.
Hey, real quick, Joe, before we get into the Blues, how's the hockey rink at the house? Did it survive?
Buddy, I'm looking at it right now. What did it survive? Come on. This is Joey the bread man you're talking about here. We ended up going 4 to 5 inches thick this year on my rink. I've done them in the past where I'm 1.5 to 2 inches, and they freeze quickly. But the problem is they thaw quickly on like sunny days like this. So took a little extra time, made sure I put a good foundation in. And outdoor rinks really are all about layers. You got to have layers. So if you just fill it up to the top with your water hose on day one and let it freeze, it'll be fine. But the idea is if you have 3 inches to play with, and all of a sudden you fill up an inch, let that freeze. Come in the next day, fill up another inch. You know what I mean? Kind of follow suit with that. If you build upon layers, typically on these sunny, warm days, it lasts. And we've been using the heck out of it. I dummied my son last night, made him look like a fool. Beat him 5-4 in OT yesterday, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. I was the Dallas Stars, he was the Blues, and unfortunately for him, he lost. Unfortunately for the Blues, they lost too.
Unfortunately, indeed. And just next time, don't let the Dallas Stars get to you there. He's Joe Vitale. He's the Blues analyst, bread man, and ice maker, as you just heard here on BK and Ferrario. So, Joe, let's start with the Broberg news, because when we saw yesterday that he had a spill on the ice, I think a lot of people held their breath for about 12 hours to find out what was going to take place. That's a massive win for St. Louis to know that wasn't anything significant, because one thing that this Blues team can't afford right now is injuries.
You're right. And I don't know what it is with these Edmonton boys, but they really like to scare us.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Dylan Holloway, he took a shot to the neck. It hit that nerve, which kind of makes the judo chop nerve. We talked about that already.
Judo chop nerve.
The judo chop nerve kind of made his body go limp, but he's okay. He went out in a stretcher in the game, and he was on the ice the next day, so that was a crazy scare. And then Broberg, same thing, a scary collision yesterday, and like something that was going to be some long time, like of course happened earlier this year when Mitch Marner hit him and he missed some time. But luckily for the Blues, he is on the ice. And Jim Montgomery addressed his overall play this morning when asked. He talked about how he came on the scenes terrific to start the year. Sometimes players, when they have that new surge of energy, new surge of life with a new team, that early offset of playing really solid hockey is inevitable. And I think that, to be fair, that injury definitely kind of put him out for a while, definitely slowed his momentum down. I think we're seeing a more defensively responsible Broberg, and I think he's getting better and better each and every day. Remember, it was a lower body, so sometimes it takes a little time for those things to kind of sort themselves out. And you essentially got to trust your body again to ultimately feel like you can make that push.
And, Joe, the Blues, Pavel Buchnevich, he'll be on the third line again tonight, back-to-back games, which he'll be on the third line. What have you seen from Buch and his struggles here in the last month or so?
I think that Buch is he's coming, and when it goes, it's going to go quick. He's a player that scores in bunches. He's a streaky kid. When he gets hot, he's going to run with it. I look at a player like Braden Shen, who, again, Jim Montgomery addressed this morning saying that Braden looks like the Braden Shen of 3 years ago right now. I mean, he is just surging, and when you're in that kind of zone, it's really hard to slow you down. I think Bucci's got that potential. He's got all the tools. He's got a really good mind for the game, a true student of the game. I think that he's in a spot now where he is on a third line, and I think that his play has kind of given him the right to be on that third line. And for him, it's really just about getting that fight back in him to have that urgency to his game, have that compete, have the stops and starts, bring the habits back. Because if he starts to show that, start getting a couple goals on that third line, maybe all of a sudden another opportunity opens up in the top six. And, of course, I think that's where he will be his best.
How much of this, too, Joe, and I think we talked about this on Saturday or Monday's pregame, but how much of this, too, is Jim Montgomery trying to set a standard for the entire team?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that, and I think that, he's come in and he's established himself right off the hop of, not playing certain players, healthy scratching certain guys, whether it be a Brandon Saad, a veteran player. That certainly grabs some attention. I think a big attention grab for Jim Montgomery, Alex, was when the Blues ended up winning a game and he switched 2 players in, 2 players out after a win, which is just really unheard of. You don't see it a lot in the National Hockey League. So I think that's what, some of the things that add up. Then you go to Utah where, of course, he benches, Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich for the final 10 minutes of that first period. I mean, he's basically saying, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care if you have a letter on your sweater. I don't care how many years you played in this league. If you're not going to play up to the standard that we need you to, this team needs you to, you're just not going to play. I mean, to me, it's not a threat. And I think some players may take it as a threat, but it's not a threat. It's just that, hey, this is our culture. This is the way we do things. There are non-negotiables within this culture. And if you're going to negotiate your way or attempt to negotiate your way out of some of these things, whether it be, simple hockey things of having good sticks, stopping and starting, competing on a puck in the corner in the last minute of period. I mean, those non-negotiables for a coach are non-negotiables. And when you break a non-negotiable, you have to pay a consequence for it. And I think that I will say, too, a lot of times these players, and when you have coaches like this, you can really lose a room quickly. Jim has not. I mean, he has got a great reputation. He's won everywhere he's won. He's got a great, pedigree for winning. And players know that, so they respect him. Look at the way Robert Thomas has responded after the bench. I think his game has really, really increased, especially in that Vegas game. I thought he was very noticeable. So to me, those are signs that he hasn't lost the room, and I don't anticipate him ever losing the room because, like I mentioned before, the respect level and just the presence he has is kind of through the roof when you talk about NHL coaches across the league.
And, Joe, one change that Jim Montgomery and the coaching staff ended up deciding to do a couple games ago was they decided to kind of break up those power play units, not be so top-heavy on one and kind of balance them out a little bit more. And in the month of January, in 9 games, their power play is 6th in the NHL at 31%. Do you think they've found an answer for this power play for the rest of the season here?
I think so, Tanner. I do. I think that, this power play has kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde for a little while here where, you look at that Utah game on that last trip, for example. Did they get a power play goal? Yes. Was their percentage heading into that game around 30% in the last 11? Yes. But at the same time, the downside is that, sometimes it's not just about the percentages and getting goals. It's when you get the goals, like the timeliness of the goals. I would always say, and I've always heard this around the league, and I don't care about your face-off percentage. I don't care if you're a 60% guy. Where do you win them at? Are you winning them late in the game in the D zone? If it's a 6-on-5, are you winning it? I'd rather have a guy that's at 30%, but you can trust on an offensive zone face-off late in the game, he's going to snap that thing back. The neutral zone face-offs, like, I don't know, throw them out the window. To me, it's a nothing face-off. Yeah, you ideally would love to start with the puck. But and I refer to face-offs to power play because to me it's the same thing. If you want to have a great face-off percentage, we'll have at it, go for it. But if you're not a guy that can be depended on to win a late game face-off, late period face-off, or win one in the offensive zone, certainly when you need a goal, to me that is as much important about being a good face-off guy than your actual percentage. And I'll flip it to the power play. It's the same thing. Yeah, you appreciate the percentage. You appreciate the fact that the power play has been clicking. But, in that Utah game, they had 6 minutes in a row. We only got one shot on net. And that's a game you can claw back on. going to be perfect ever. Certainly you have situations where it just is not going to be clicking that certain night. But I think that, the percentages have been good, but I really think that this team can really thrive more and more off of the timeliness of making sure they're getting those power play goals in crucial times of the game.
We'll see if they can take advantage of this Vegas team that's still in a little bit of a lull themselves. They're going to be without William Karlsson and, of course, in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. Joey V, always appreciate the time, my man. We'll talk tonight at 6 o'clock for pregame coverage.
Can't wait, Alex. Thanks so much. I got to give my good friend Louie a shout-out. No other reason than my kids want Louie to come to their preschool, and they're going to go bananas when Louie shows up. So I texted Louie, and I said, Louie, hope you're staying warm up in the North Pole. Would you make a special trip down to St. Louis here in Kirkwood? We have a preschool of kids that want to see you. And, of course, Louie fired back. I don't even know how he texts with those big paws.
But I was just going to ask that.
He fired me right back on his big blue bear paws, wherever the hell he is. And you know what? That doggone Louie, he's coming to my kids' preschool. So I just want to say thank you, Louie.
Look at that. Louie just saving the days and changing lives. He really is the best. Maybe we can get him to come visit T-Bone sometime, Joe.
You should. Yeah, he's going to be putting smiles on faces. I don't know about changing diapers. Those big paws might be a little tough. Maybe ripping those diapers. But overall, he's excited.
Yeah, once you get it in the fur, you can't get it out, Joe.
You can do that. So.
Have fun, buddy. We'll see you tonight.
Be good.
There you go, Joe Vitale. He is the best. He'll be with me tonight for our pregame coverage that begins at 6 o'clock. Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, send us your questions, 314-399-9646, our Air Comfort Service text line. Also put them over on our YouTube chat, The Graveyard at 101 ESPN STL. We'll get to your questions next here on 101 ESPN.
The Blues play on ESPN.
Shoots, he scores!
Tonight, Blues and Golden Knights. Pre-game at 6, puck drop at 7.
The wait is over.
The quest for the Stanley Cup happens here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN.
Hey, can we talk? It's a new year and
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646. That is our Air Comfort Service text line. Also, our YouTube chat at 101 ESPN STL. And you can check that out on our studio cams, brought to you by the Air Alliance team. So let's start here from the 314. Fellas, who do you believe could potentially win the Coach of the Year next year in the NFL? And we're going to get to the Coach of the Year nominees in this one on top of the MVP finalists coming up in about 30 minutes or so. But for those that may have missed it, Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, Andy Reid. Those were the finalists for Coach of the Year NFL. So let's look into our crystal ball. Next year, of the coaches that have already been hired by their new teams, who's got the best shot of being a Coach of the Year finalist?
Ooh, Ben Johnson is going to be probably right there near the top of the list. The one that should have pretty decent chance at Coach of the Year next year would be Mike Vrabel.
That's my choice.
Yeah, Patriots have a ton of cap space, unbelievable amount of cap space. And if he can get Drake May to the next level, they may not be a playoff team with how loaded the AFC is. But if the Patriots are like a fun 6-7 win team, if they can be kind of like what the Cardinals were this year, then I could see where you look at them and go, okay, I see how you give Vrabel Coach of the Year. Look at what he did with that franchise in year number one.
I like Vrabel. I think he is a more than sound candidate. I'm also looking elsewhere inside of that own division, Tanner, because I know that the narrative is such that we love what Johnson is potentially able to do with Caleb Williams in the Windy City. But I think Mr. Glenn there with the Jets, exactly the sort of personality, honestly, that this team needs. And some people might say, okay, he's entirely too similar to a Robert Saleh with the defensive background, and you fired that guy. Well, I think there's much more equity in this situation, however, because you're talking about somebody who literally did play in that division and has that NFL experience and expertise. I think it means more in the locker room as such. And as far as transforming that culture, I think that he could be very Vrabel-esque in that regard. He has some growing, of course, some growth to do, but there are still many parts defensively on that roster, I believe, and you have some playmakers on offense. You jettison Aaron Rodgers, you have Breece Hall, you have Garrett Wilson, you have toys with which to play. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Glenn, in year one, in that division with only Buffalo as the clear front runner, could really inflict some damage, I think.
From the 636 on Air Comfort Service text line, guys, with the injuries to Broberg this season, do you think the Blues should even consider extending him next year? Absolutely. And in fact, I would approach him even faster with the injuries and be like, hey, man,
yes,
little fragility these days. What if we lock you up to an 8-year contract? I mean, whatever this was, it had nothing to do with the knee. Because if it was, he would not be practicing.
Yeah.
This sounds like, and what Lou told us yesterday from practice, he had a spill. And did he tweak something awkwardly? Did you have to go back and get the skate off to make sure everything was okay? Probably. This doesn't have anything to do with the knee. T-Bone and I were actually just talking about this in the office. He's 23 years old. By the end of his RFA status with the Blues, which he'd still be an RFA, but he's going to be 24 at the end of next year. You could legitimately approach this guy and be like, we'll give you an 8-year deal, and it would take him to he's 32 years old. And then you could still go to him, depending on where he's at in terms of talent-wise, with another 7 or 8 year contract. Because as we're seeing with Ryan Suter, if you're good, defensemen can last pretty long in the NHL. Yeah. These injuries have nothing to do with my expectation with Philip Broberg. I would absolutely look to extend him this offseason, and I do the exact same with Dylan Holloway.
Bingo.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it unless another major injury popped up. But, to me, he hasn't lost. I thought Joey said it perfectly when he mentioned Broberg. He hasn't really lost a step, right? He had a significant injury against Toronto. Now, his offensive game hasn't necessarily been where it was early on. Yeah. But we all kind of knew that his offense was probably going to come back towards the pack, and he was going to be more defensive-minded. And that's exactly what it's been. I don't think his game's been any worse since that knee injury, so it doesn't tell me that there's been any lasting effect. Now, if something did pop up this season to where then it was another significant injury, then I would stall on maybe some contract talks, but I don't think there's any reason to be fearful to do a contract extension right now.
Yeah, for another close call to have occurred so quickly on the heels of the previous injury, certainly more significant in that respect. I attribute that to being a little more fluky, honestly, than anything else. I don't care that you have only seen him for 35 games with the Blue Note sweater on. You absolutely are proactive in this sense, and you try to ink this young man to the extension ASAP. I'm with you too, Alex, when it comes to Holloway.
From the 319, if you had to refresh the Blues nucleus, they're doing the Cardinals method. Nice refresh out there. Brought to you by Febreze. If you had to refresh the Blues nucleus for the future, are Holloway and Broberg top 4 of that nucleus?
Ooh.
Thomas and Kyrou are still going to be top 2 in my opinion.
I'd agree. I'd say yeah.
Probably. I think Parayko would still be up there.
Yeah. The only reason that I wouldn't, he would be like 5 on this list for me, top 5. Only reason he's not top 4 is age. Because Broberg is, you just mentioned Broberg's age. That's why I would have him ahead of Parayko right now. And that's not because I would be saying, you got to move Parayko. Right. No, I'd keep Parayko because, as you just said, defensemen age like fine wine. Yeah. He's still got plenty of years in him. It's just Broberg is so much younger. So I think it probably would be. For me, it'd be Broberg, Holloway, Thomas, and Kyrou would be my 4.
Broberg is in my top 4 because of the position, certainly. And then Holloway just barely on the outside looking in. But the fact that we're having this conversation in late January just tells you how effective he has been.
Yeah, I think you convinced me. Parayko, as much as I love Parayko, you got to wonder what 3 years from now looks like with Parayko. And I think he's still going to be a horse like he is right now, but it's not going to be to the same level. So what does it look like? And what I know is my core is filled with a 26-year-old, a 25-year-old, and 2 23-year-olds. And that's a pretty good spot to be in. Yeah. Do any of these young rookies fall into that? Does a Dvorsky or a Snuggerud even get into that?
Not yet for me.
Hard to until you see him?
Yeah, not yet for me because I am one of those that, I got to see it before I'm going to believe it. And I think it takes those guys some time to grow into it as well. I don't think they're trade pieces by any means if you did kind of refresh the core 4, but I can't put them there until we see them at the NHL level because all it is right now is like you see in baseball. All it is prospect hype, man. When you get to the big leagues or you get to the NHL, it's a totally different game, and that's when we'll find out if they belong in the core.
So let's tie these 2 together because we get one from the 618 that's asking if the Blues should trade for Brock Besser, and the other one saying, could the Blues trade Scott Perunovich for a winger? No, I'm not saying you could trade Scott Perunovich for Brock Besser, but why I'm lumping them together is I don't think Scott Perunovich gets you anything on the trade market. I don't think you're going to get anything that helps your team. The question is going to be, is it worth going out there and trying to be aggressive to go get a winger now or do it in the offseason? Because I can make an argument for waiting, considering what some of these names are out there. But if that's the biggest spot that you're lacking, which obviously it is if you've got Brandon Saad playing with Robert Thomas, then yeah, you might have to look at adding a winger. I just don't know if Brock Besser is it. You're getting him for 1 year. Let's say he gets here and he goes off because it's a contract year. Then you pay him a lot of money. And this is a guy who's hit 40 goals once. And BK's brought this up. You're talking about 25, 15, 27, 17. Very inconsistent. We just lived that train. Do you want to ride it again?
Yeah, I don't think the Blues will be in on the Brock Besser sweepstakes. I agree, though, on the Perunovich thing. I don't think you can move Perunovich for a significant winger. If anything, it would be kind of a depth-for-depth trade. Perunovich is the guy that's going to be, if he does get moved, it's more of just a throw-in. He won't be the centerpiece of any deal. That will be more of picks or some other prospect, I guess he's not a prospect anymore, but Bolduc was the first name that I kind of thought of. He'd be more of a centerpiece than Perunovich. I don't see the Blues making the big swing for the winger this year. I truly believe that they're going to hopefully think that Jimmy Snuggerud can be that guy. I think they realize that it's not worth completely going all in at that top-line winger spot for a team that's a fringe playoff team at this year's deadline. Yeah. And you can make that trade and then not even make the playoffs. Right. So that's why I don't think they'll do it. If they're going to do anything, I think they're going to invest on that number 3 center and try to upgrade over Oscar Sundqvist.
Real quick, I just looked at these Broberg for the person that was bringing up the differences that they've played. The first 12 games before he was injured, 9 points in 12 games, was a +6, playing 19 minutes and 34 seconds. From his return on November 30th all the way up until now, he's played a total of 23 games, only 6 points, but still a +2, and he's playing over a minute more average time on ice per game. So
Really
the points
good.
might not be there, but he's playing more defensively, and he's still a net positive for you, and he's still getting at least 2 shots on goal per game.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want in a guy when you consider locking him up. We'll get more into the Blues conversation in the 1 o'clock hour, but coming up next on BK and Ferrario, if you could guarantee a career year for one Cardinal player, who would it be? That and T-Bone'd like to make the case of the NL Central this upcoming season. Could be fun. We'll explain all that coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN's Blues Fan of the Week.
Congratulations to Steve Hull from Pocahontas, Illinois. He was just named our new 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week.
Submit your pick now to be the next 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week and take home a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Learn more at 101ESPN.com. Now listen to 101 ESPN On Demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company. WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Krugman Law Firm. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
So we're gonna let you be the fairy godmother today, or fairy godfather, whatever you want to be. Never know. Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. I've been watching a lot of Disney movies lately, which shouldn't surprise anybody. 3-year-old, 2-year-old girls at home. A lot of Cinderella going on in my house. But BK brought this up yesterday, and I believe he tweeted it out. If you could sprinkle your magic fairy dust over one Cardinal player for this upcoming season, you are getting a career year from that Cardinal player. Who would it be? I think, at least I saw a lot of the responses to BK's tweet was the guy that I would pick. But I'm curious, both of yours. Mine's Jordan Walker. And there's one reason why. Because a career year for Jordan Walker tells me that they didn't get it wrong in terms of their assessing that prospect. And a career year from him means that you're just going to keep going up. Now, maybe he never gets back to that level. But if he hits a career year and you know that that player has star quality, then that is massive for this refresh from the Cardinals. It'll start smelling like a brand new bathroom with a new toilet seat in there if Jordan Walker has a career year. So there's a lot of options you can go with, but for me and a lot of the people that responded to BK's text, it would have to be Jordan Walker.
Yeah, Walker's, I get why everybody wants Jordan Walker to have that career year. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world for everything you said, right? He's the 4-tool player, I would say. 5-tool, why not? He can hit for power. He can hit for average, as you saw in his rookie season when he came up in 2022. He, in theory, can be a good defender if he can just become kind of average in his route running.
Yeah.
He's got an incredible arm. He's got a cannon of an arm out there in the outfield. And he's got decent speed as well. You know, he kind of goes underrated. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's going to steal 20 bags. But he's got really good speed for a guy that size. So I get why Walker is the number one answer for just about everybody. I'll throw one more out here, it kind of ties into them going with this refresh, of course. But mine would be Nolan Gorman. Because I think if Nolan Gorman has a career year, the T-Bone 3 prediction last year of 40 home runs isn't out of the question. Because he's just got, to me, the best pure power within the organization. He is the best power hitter in this organization, and he's the only guy that I can look at and say that guy could hit 40 home runs. And if he does, it's kind of one of two things, right? It's, okay, not only to your point on like evaluating a prospect, right? The Cardinals are right on evaluating him, but if he ends up being a 40 home run guy, that's potentially a middle of the order bat, someone that can hit in that kind of 3-4 spot. And if he's going to hit 40 home runs, that means he's cut down on the strikeouts and the swing and miss in his game. And that would be one of like 4 guys that can hit 40 homers. There were only 4 guys in Major League Baseball that hit 40-plus last year. Juan Soto, Anthony Santander, Shohei Ohtani, and Aaron Judge. Nolan Gorman's got 40 home run power in his bat. So that's why I would say if I could sprinkle it on one guy, it would be him for me.
I think there's a lot of merit to both of those selections. I would love for nothing more than for Jordan Walker to be that guy to absolutely storm onto the scene from opening day in 2025, take that baton and run with it. My problem there is that it was such a topsy-turvy, in many ways disappointing 2024 that I almost feel as if we need a couple of good months of production and output before we really ramp up those expectations all over again. And if he's able to exceed those next summer, that's great. That's fantastic. Same thing with Gorman. I think then maybe in that case, Tanner, maybe we can convince BK for that matter as well that you're talking about not just a special power contributor, but maybe a potential core piece. I will actually go, though, with the slightly less titillating option, but an important one nonetheless, because I need to see clarity when it comes to this outfield, and I need to see clarity with respect to this particular player. We talked over the last couple of days. I heard you guys yesterday, the day before, discussing the various pieces, some of the young guys who can make up this leadership core moving forward, but I want dependability, and that certainly falls under the umbrella of one Lars Nootbaar. I don't even care at this point whether you're talking about running with him, health notwithstanding, in center field, corner outfield, wherever. I have to see tangible production for more than 117 games. I need to see whether he's somebody who's able to hit better than 260, who's able to be a quality OBP and OPS guy, and somebody who can really be more of that linchpin in your order, because dependability is going to matter so much with so many of these young individuals making up the nucleus of this team in the years to come. And for me, Lars Nootbaar is one of those guys about whom we actually have the fewest answers, even though we've been talking about him and we say he's valued by X number of other organizations. Well, after years now, years going on, we need to actually see it for 120, 130 games, or I hate to say it, maybe it is the point at which you really consider cutting bait in that regard.
I'm actually a little upset with myself that I didn't think of this, and we got a lot of really good suggestions on our Air Comfort Service text line, and we'll get to them here but the main one that I'm seeing is Nolan Arenado. And here's why I like that one, T-Bone. A couple of reasons. One, we're doing the assumption of Nolan Arenado is in St. Louis. And remember, this isn't realistic. We're putting that fairy dust on it. If he's here, a career year from Nolan Arenado, you're talking about 40-plus home runs and 100-plus RBIs. And this is a guy that I think every single person has basically said, nope, not going to happen. It's done. He's old. It's not going to work. I mean, we all agree Wilson Contreras has the ability to be a top 10 MVP conversation. And if you're getting a career year from Nolan Arenado, well, now I don't have to sit here and say refresh. Now I could sit here and say, cool, you're contending. Because I'll have two guys that are in the MVP conversation, and Wilson Contreras and Nolan Arenado. Remember, fairy dust is being put on Nolan Arenado right now. You know that the defense is going to be there. I mean, this is the middle of the order bat. Is it realistic? Absolutely not. But here's the other reason why that really works. If you seriously need to get out of this contract and this player, you know what's going to help your cause of getting rid of Nolan Arenado? Him having a career year.
Yeah.
You know what's going to help you get the best return for Nolan Arenado? Him having a career year. And now you're talking a trade deadline, which would be a weird conversation because if you're talking career year for him, maybe you're not having the trade discussions. But if you need to get out of that contract and need to open up the playing space for Nolan Gorman, well, now you have the realistic opportunity to trade that player and say, cool, we want one of your best prospects in return.
Yeah, see, it's everything that you said about Arenado there, I 100% agree with, but the thing is like I don't care if he has a career year. And the reason I say that is because if Arenado is here, well, then you're running into the roadblocks of what we've talked about all offseason, which means, hey, may not be getting enough playing time for some of these young guys that you need, right? Because now third base is clogged up with 600 plate appearances. If he ends up having a career year, well, then the Cardinals are going to convince themselves not to trade him. Like, I can see where if Arenado is here and plays well and they're in it at the deadline, they won't be moving him. And so now you're back to that spot where somebody's getting knocked out of plate appearances. Now, maybe overall that ends up being a good thing, but I still think it is best to just write off the Arenado experience and to say it's better for us to get career years out of somebody that is younger, that we don't know much about, because we know what Nolan Arenado is. And I understand that, well, if he has a career year, you can move him. I don't know if you are going to move him then, because then that means you probably are competitive, to your point. And now you're back in the spot where, checks notes, you have been the last couple of years.
But you're doing that while you're still playing all of these young guys.
But see, somebody's getting knocked out of the playing order now, right? Because why have we talked about, well, if Arenado's here, Newpart needs to play in center? Well, because then you are freeing up at-bats. Well, they're not going to do that. They're going to go with a Ciani or a Scott. I think there's a realistic shot Scott makes this team out of camp. I think the changes you saw in the second half, he's only going to build upon at spring training. So somebody you're not getting answers on if Arenado is here. And that's why I would push back on that a little bit of, I just fear that you're going to end up where you were just a couple years ago, where it is, okay, well, two guys in the middle of the order are veterans that are leading the way, and yes, somebody that we like, we're not getting answers on, and then in the offseason, well, we can't move on from that guy because we've got to get him plate appearances.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Bradford.
No, I was just going to say, namely, the individual who was honestly responsible for your best offensive production, I would say, in the first half of last season, who is option A as far as really having the at-bats limited in that scenario if Arenado were to stay around? It's Alec Burleson, is it not? It's Alec Burleson, because where exactly in the event that Arenado stays at the hot corner, okay, you can't really get tricky with Gorman for that matter. You know John Mozeliak has been on record numerous times saying, what would it be like to basically have a 500 at-bat season from Nolan Gorman? The upside is there. Well, in that case, Donovan gets pushed to more of the super utility role. Alec Burleson, by default, misses out on the ops because you know Contreras is at first base and you're going with the defensive combination for the most part behind the plate. You know Pages is going to get that time, so Herrera has to, if he gets any ABs, has to be as a DH.
I mean, the answer's pretty easy. It's Herrera's your catcher and Burleson's your DH, and you've got...
Now what do you do with Gorman?
Newpar's in center field, Donovan's in left field, and Gorman's at second base. And I know people don't like it, but if I can be honest, I don't really care about Michael Ciani in the future for this team. It's Victor Scott, and Victor Scott's in your minor league system.
Well, what if Victor Scott makes the team? Like, now you're back into this crunch again. And this is why, like, they have to move Arenado is the conversation again.
Which, if I'm getting a career year, and you're right, the Cardinals would say, well, we can't trade that player. You have to have the firm decision of we are trading this man no matter what.
And I will add this, and this is the other reason why I don't I wouldn't say Arenado in this conversation is. I don't even think you need to. I think you can trade him now. And that's still my belief. I still think somebody's going to potentially pivot to him if Bregman doesn't sign with the Red Sox. So say he ends up going to the Tigers, who is the other team that he's connected to. So if he goes to Detroit, I totally still see Boston making a pivot and coming to Arenado. And that's why I say I don't know if you need Arenado to recoup value. It would be great if he did, though.
Yeah.
Because now it's not as much of a salary dump. There is some value in the contract, so maybe teams you don't even need to eat money on it. Odds are you still are going to have to, since it is a complicated deal. But that's why I don't think you need that from him, right? If the Astros were willing to trade for Arenado already, if the Red Sox are kind of connected to him as a pivot, we'll see if Detroit becomes a pivot. I don't know if Arenado would go there. But there's already teams that are connected to Arenado, which means you don't necessarily need him to build his value back up because teams already still value Nolan Arenado.
Yeah. Final one that a texter brought up that I wanted to mention. They said Miles Mikolas. And their reasoning was, you know what you're getting from Sonny Gray. Miles Mikolas has a career year on his final contract, gives you a legit 1-2 punch for a successful season. Here's my concern and what we just said with Nolan Arenado. Miles Mikolas has a career year. They do what they did with Adam Wainwright, and they bring him back for one more. And at some point, you got to move on from that. So it's kind of hypocritical for me to say because Nolan Arenado, I'm like, yeah, I would love that one, but he's under contract. So, like, if he's good and you don't trade him, he's here. Miles Mikolas is a free agent after this year, and you get a career year from him. Sure, it makes your team great this year, but then you're bringing him back next year, and I don't know if I want this team to be in that position.
Yeah, I honestly, this is going to sound a little weird. I don't know if I would want any of the, if I had this fairy dust that we're talking about, I wouldn't put it on any of the veteran guys, right? Because you don't gain much from a Miles Mikolas career year. Maybe you can move him at the trade deadline. What you really want is to say, oh, Andre Palante, wow, that is a number 3 for us for the long run. Oh, wow, Quinn Matthews, that is a number 2. Holy cow, look at this career year that he's having. Wow, Jordan Walker, that is an MVP caliber guy for years to come. Wow, Mason Wynn, that guy is a top 10 shortstop in Major League Baseball under team control. All the veterans, I wouldn't want to put the fairy dust on them because I think it's more important that you find an answer internally, that you have whether it's a number 2 starter in whether it be a Matthews or a Palante or hell, even a Michael McGreevy, who was really good when he was up here, or you find a middle of the order bat from the young guys, because that is the point of this refresh. Find somebody that is under team control that you have for the next 5 to 6 years that you can build around. And if we're just doing that on Arenado or Mikolas, then we're not getting the answers that we need here in St. Louis.
And I understand that this is a whole other ball of wax, so to speak, but do we really know what we're getting from Sonny Gray this coming season either? Are we getting the guy who was the second-place finisher in Cy Young voting with the Twins a couple of years ago, or are we getting the guy who has, since 2020, only made 28 or more starts on 2 occasions since that particular year? I, by no means, am absolutely committed to the realization that we know exactly what you get from him at the top end of the rotation either. But
I mean, the Sonny Gray for the Cy Young finish with the Minnesota Twins, this Sonny Gray was better than that Sonny Gray, just in terms of strikeouts per 9. Now, he pitched a little less than him. He pitched 18 less innings than what he did with Minnesota, but strikeouts per 9.
Yeah. Hammy at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, but strikeouts per 9, and I mean, he posted 28 times. As much, and I'm with you, Bradford, at the beginning, I've pushed back with Sonny Gray and be I don't think he's the guy that everyone's making him out to be. That's as close to a number 1 as you've had in a really long time, so.
Yeah, there was the trade-off of the strikeouts, the punch-outs relative to that home run gauntlet. So if the ball is kept in the park to a greater degree, I see what you're going with there.
Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. In 15, we'll get to in or out. We weren't here on Monday, so we'll give you an opportunity to send us your in or out scenarios to our Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. Also our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Some NFL quick hitters, including the NFL MVP finalists and the Dallas Cowboys making a bad decision. That's next on 101 ESPN.
It's time for another moment in Blues history.
On this date back in 1986, the Blues would defeat the LA Kings by a final score of 4-3. After the Kings put up 3, St. Louis responded with 4 unanswered goals. 2 from Mark Hunter and 1 from Joe Mullen, all on the power play, with Rick Mahar adding a short-handed goal. I'm Jordan Deacon, and that was this date in Blues history.
This date in Blues history was powered by Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. For all your HVAC needs, classicaircare.com.
We've all been.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
All right, let's get into some NFL quick hitters. As we found out earlier today, the finalists for the MVP, for Coach of the Year, and a couple of the other awards were announced. Let's start with the NFL MVP finalists, along with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. Not surprising, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Saquon Barkley. Those are the three I think we talked so much about. They are going to be top three in the conversation. Jared Goff, who I think I brought up a couple of times, and Joe Burrow. I'm not surprised that Joe Burrow got on that for how his season went. Do you think he gets any of the votes?
I don't think he'll be top three. I think your top three will be...
It's pretty sudden. Do you think Saquon gets top three?
I think so. I think it's hard to deny Saquon's season and not put him top three. I think he should be more in the conversation for NFL MVP, but I just know how this goes, right? It's a quarterback award. So, but I think Saquon would be in my top three. Like, if I had to do a ballot myself, I would end up going Lamar 1, Allen 2, Saquon 3. That would be my top three, and I would have Burrow probably at 4.
I'm with you there. For me, Burrow clearly outdistances Goff, actually. And I understand the regular season numbers were absolutely phenomenal. As per usual, in the regular season, yes, Goff had a couple of clunkers, and yes, he was aided supremely by the likes of Montgomery and Gibbs in the backfield, too. But Burrow, when you consider just the absolute shambles that offensive line, that offense, the structure in general, found himself in for the majority of the season, to get that team back in the thick of the race, period, to have a shot at actually qualifying in the final weekend of the regular season, pretty remarkable. But it's a clear-cut, Alex, for me, 1, 2, and 3. Jackson, it's hard to deny at the end of the day. And Allen was, in my mind at least, for the better part of the first half of the season, probably the front runner, but you cannot ignore the sheer statistical volume there from Jackson. So Lamar, Allen, and Barkley, closer than a lot of people I think would put him at 3 for me.
Let me ask you this. If Saquon Barkley breaks Eric Dickerson's record, does he go higher than 3?
No.
You don't think so?
It's such a quarterback award now. Like, I'm shocked we just don't call it the quarterback MVP award.
Sounds like a lot of the awards.
Yeah, I don't think there was any chance he finished top 3. I think there's even a chance, like, I said he's top 3. I believe he's going to be top 3. It will not shock me if when they finally release the results at the NFL award ceremony, it wouldn't shock me if he's like 4th or 5th. I could see where he finishes behind Burrow. To me, finishing behind Goff would be a bit of a stretch, but I can see where it happens, right?
Yeah.
Because the quarterback is just such a valuable position.
So let's do the Coach of the Year finalists. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, and Andy Reid. Any of those jump out to either of you guys?
First off, I'm shocked Andy Reid's on here. Kind of the same with Dan Campbell because, like, we expected those guys to be really good.
Somebody has to take the chief stance with BK out. Okay, I'll be that guy.
I don't get the Andy Reid one, so you can explain that here in a second, Bradford. I would go Kevin O'Connell. I mean, looking at what the Vikings were, it's impressive that they were that good with Sam Darnold. And we saw Sam Darnold's flaws in the final 2 games of the season, right? We saw he looked confused against Detroit. He really looked confused against the LA Rams in the postseason. And yes, I get it. You don't take in the postseason to account. But, like, we all knew there was a chance that, like, Jane Daniels could be a really good quarterback. We all knew there was a chance Bo Nix could be a good quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Credit to Dan Quinn, credit to Sean Payton for getting them into the playoffs with rookie quarterbacks. I think the most impressive job is you took basically Sam Darnold from being a written-off backup quarterback to, hey, that guy had a really good season, finished 5th in passing yards, was really good for the Minnesota Vikings, and got them to the playoffs. It wasn't just their defense. And a lot of people may say, well, no, Brian Flores is the reason that was a playoff team. No, I think they're going to look at it and go, hey, Kevin O'Connell's the reason. I think Kevin O'Connell's one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL. I think he's deserving of the Coach of the Year award.
He went out and won multiple games for them in December. Let's not forget about that. And yes, the final 2 weeks of action, absolute clunkers. But bear in mind, once again, this is a regular season award. And I said it a couple of weeks ago with you guys when I filled in. Kevin O'Connell certainly fits the bill in that category. He's not immune from blame for the way in which he made some decisions in the first round of the playoffs. But again, so many of us, I think now as well, want to assess or give additional credit to Dan Quinn, as well we should, for what Washington has done in the playoffs. But when you look at body of work in the regular season, especially relative to expectations, this Minnesota team, very few people would have envisioned this group, even with Flores orchestrating the defense, even with Justin Jefferson, still in my mind the best wide receiver in the league on that squad, given the Vikings a chance of competing with the Lions or even the Packers for that matter. It's still O'Connell.
Yeah, mine's Kevin O'Connell as well. And for everything that you guys just said, like, I can make an argument for Dan Quinn to get 12 wins with the rookie quarterback, but I was looking at the schedule. They had a couple of really good wins, but they also just beat up on a lot of bad teams, which is not taking anything away from them.
Good point.
But you had a really talented quarterback on top of the Minnesota Vikings, had Sam Darnold, and made him look very talented. Okay, a couple of notes from some coaching / front office decisions. Let's start with the Jaguars, because we got this news at the end of our show yesterday. Of course, the Jaguars in conversations with a lot of head coaches. The controversy surrounding that team is Trent Baalke, their general manager. A lot of coaches don't want to be there because they don't get on the same wavelength as Baalke. And then you had Shad Khan, the owner, basically sitting next to him holding a press conference saying, look, we'll fire the guy if we need to. Lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, they do fire the individual. And Shad Khan came out today saying, like, look, I'm trying to put a winning team on the field, and this gives us our best chance to do it, and I'll continue to do that. The real question, though, is like, okay, you got rid of the general manager. Maybe you probably should have done that a little sooner when a lot more of the coaches were available. I'm glad you got rid of the GM, but where do you go on the coaching side of things? There's not a whole lot of options out there, with the exception of Mike McCarthy, whose name's floating around. I think he was tied to the New Orleans Saints. You've got the Pete Carroll side of things. You can go down some of these offensive coordinators, but all the sexy jobs are gone now. It seems you might have waited a little too long if you were Shad Khan.
Yeah, why you didn't do this when, now I don't think you would have taken the job, but like why you don't do this when like Ben Johnson's available.
At least get the interviews.
Even like Liam Cohen, who it sounds like was their favorite target, and then as we talked about yesterday, decided to sign a contract extension with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, why would that be? Why would he not want the Jaguars job? I don't think he wanted to work with Trent Baalke. And I think that was finally the final straw for Shad Khan. But you're 100% right. This is the kind of move you've got to make once the season is over,
Totally.
right? There's a reason they call it Black Monday after the season ends, right? That's when you're supposed to fire everybody when you're going to make these decisions so you can get a head start on all of these kind of decision-making processes. Because now I don't know if there is a good enough candidate out there to where I would say, all right, I'm going to hire you as our head coach, and I want you to pick the next GM.
Right.
Like Robert Saleh's got a second interview. No offense to Robert Saleh, I don't want him choosing the next GM. You know, there's none of those candidates out there. The Chiefs did this. BK's told this story before. Everybody knew Andy Reid was a great head coach already when he left Philadelphia. So, yeah, if your GM sucks, you're willing to bring in Andy Reid and say, hey, you go hire the next guy. We'll get rid of this guy over here. None of those guys are out there right now to make that decision unless it is Pete Carroll. But I haven't even seen Pete Carroll connected to him. And even then, he's getting up there in age.
Right.
To where I don't even know if I would have him select the next GM.
You got to get an offensive-minded coach if you're the Jaguars. Like, you got a great defense, don't get me wrong, but you're getting somebody that can get the best out of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
You've committed to that individual. You've paid that individual. You've got a lot of money tied up to your offensive players in terms of Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne on top of Trevor Lawrence. You can't go out there and get a defensive-minded coach. Like, I get it, Robert Saleh, really fun. It's a defensive-minded guy. I need somebody who's going to come in and fix my offense, and if that's the guy I'm getting, I agree with you, T-Bone. None of these individuals that are available are worth deciding the general manager over. So this is a really bad spot to be in if you're Jacksonville.
And think about your calling card. Back in, it wasn't that long ago, 2022, that divisional round defeat to Kansas City. It was the offense, right? It was the playmakers. And you still have the majority of them there on your current roster. But absolutely, there's nobody at the front line right now, along the front lines, in consideration, real consideration for the gig with that cloud, or Alex, to use one of your favorite terms, gravitas, right? That weight, absolutely. And you have some would-be studs on that side. For better or worse, you committed to Lawrence, but you want to see how much can a Brian Thomas Jr., just named as a Pro Bowl replacement at receiver too. These are your horses. Who is going to be the innovator to take them to different heights?
Okay, can I get one more before we get in here? We'll get to in or out on the other side. This was from Adam Schefter. The Titans could be targeting pass rusher Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter with the number 1 pick in this year's draft. The Titans, quote, aren't locked in on taking a QB. As I like to say here on BK and Ferrario, okay, tough guy, we know what this is, right? Like, you can't be the Tennessee Titans to try and sell everyone on, well, we don't really need a quarterback. We've got a quarterback. We're going to take the best available player. We know what this is. You're trying to leverage to get a little bit more draft compensation or make it seem like you're not going to take a quarterback.
Swerve.
I saw, I brought that up to T-Bone. I saw somebody, I forget who had that, but they were doing a mock draft and they said the Dallas Cowboys trade the 12th overall pick and Dak Prescott to the Tennessee Titans for the first overall pick. Like, this whole, we're not going to take a quarterback, we're going to take the best available player, we're not locked in yet. We've been through this rodeo before. Don't fall for these traps.
Yeah, we're not there yet, which is what makes this report surprising. We're not at silly season yet, but I guess we just entered silly season.
Yeah, we did.
Because I would be just shocked if they decided not to go with a quarterback. Now, the only way I could kind of convince myself of that is, like, we've talked about this before, right? I don't know if Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, whoever you want to value as the best quarterback in this year's class, I don't know if any of those guys end up becoming like top 15 quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. I think they always end up being like 15 to 20-ish in the NFL when you kind of look around at where they rank. And if that's the case, okay, maybe I kind of see where you say, let's go out, let's do this. Maybe we'll find a stopgap solution. But how long are you going to do a stopgap solution, right? Like, there's not a ton of great quarterbacks coming out of next year's class either if you're the Tennessee Titans. I think you just have to take the quarterback. I'm not trading that pick. I'm not taking the edge rusher. I'm not taking Travis Hunter, though he is a one-of-one kind of talent. Mm-hmm. You got to draft the quarterback. It may be a reach. You've got to reach because it's the most important position in the NFL.
I don't disagree, but doesn't it also depend on just how transformational of a game record you think somebody like an Abdul Carter could be coming off of the edge? I'm not saying Aaron Donald-esque, a different position, of course, as far as interior versus edge rusher, but if you truly believe for him to project as to be that good, that dominant at the next level, given the tape and what everybody saw against Ohio State, against Notre Dame, if you think that he can be in that rarefied air, or maybe Travis Travis Hunter doing things we've never seen at the NFL level. I think you could at least talk yourself into an argument there as far as, okay, these guys could be legitimate stars, whereas you do have some questions about just how great at the next level a Sanders, et cetera, could be.
Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, you send us a scenario to the Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. We'll tell you if we are in or out next here on 101 ESPN.
Championship Sunday is almost here. Join the fast lane of the Rizzuto Show this Sunday at Hot Shots Fenton for Champ Bash. Both shows will be hanging out watching the AFC and NFC Championship games. Come enjoy bucket specials and delicious food. We'll also have tons of giveaways throughout the day. And don't miss the Pick'em Challenge punishment served live on site. Champ Bash this Sunday with the fast lane and the Rizzuto Show at Hot Shots Fenton. Get all the details for Champ Bash at 101ESPN.com.
Championship weekend is quickly approaching, which means you need to put together that big parlay, that Ferrario parlay I always talk about, over on the Circa Sports Illinois app. I'm honing in specifically on this Commanders-Eagles game. I've got a four-legger for you. I've got the Commanders money line. I've got the under 47.5 points and anytime Zach Ertz touchdown, and I've got the Commanders +3 in the first half. Why do I put this together? Because over on Circa Sports Illinois, I put $10 on that bet, I bring in $275. If I do that anywhere else, I'm only bringing in $250. I know only, but I go for the big money thanks to Circa Sports Illinois. Those tight money line splits, the confidence that they have, the transparency that they have, that they know you're getting the best odds possible, that they tell you to go check it out on other sportsbook apps. And when you make those big parlays, they don't limit you based off of your winning. So download the Circa Sports Illinois app today to get all your betting in for this weekend's championship action. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
The Fast Lane Home, weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. with Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and Gary Davis on 101 ESPN. 2 former pros and 1 average Joe. The Fast Lane is driven by Scrap Mart Metals Recycling. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Blues dodge a bullet with Broberg. I'm Bradford Brunson. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. After missing part of yesterday's practice, note defenseman Philip Broberg returned to the ice this morning. He's being counted on tonight versus Vegas as STL aims for 2 straight dubs over those Golden Knights. About 1 hour ago, our color analyst Joey Vitale addressed Broberg's impact among other topics. And following BK and Ferrario, you can hear that interview on 101ESPN.com. Football, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Saquon Barkley are among 5 2024 NFL MVP finalists. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Come on, man. Are you in or are you out? It's in or out with BK and Ferrario.
314-399-9646. That is our Air Comfort Service text line, our YouTube channel over at 101 ESPN STL, where you can see us on the Air Alliance team's studio cameras. You can also jump in on the Graveyard Chat over on our YouTube page as well. We weren't here on Monday, so we're going to give you a little bonus benchmark as we get to, look at me being like Bradford over here, bonus benchmark on BK and Ferrario.
That alliteration.
My God, Bradford.
Kind of a weak.
It totally was. I used one the other night with peas with my wife, and she looked at me and she goes, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess it doesn't play as well here as it did with Bradford." Anyway, Bradford, you get my respect. You send us the scenario. We'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Let's start with this, T-Bone. Actually, you know what? Why don't you start us off, T-Bone, if you've got a scenario?
Is it because you don't have one?
No, I was going to go straight to the text line. I completely forgot. So, yeah, I don't have one.
All right, guys, in or out, the LA Dodgers will break the single-season wins record this season. The record, of course, 116 wins. In or out, the Dodgers will break that record this year.
And it's going to, I mean, I'm going injuries barring, because if injuries take place, then obviously this changes things. But I don't see how this team loses less than 120 games if they stay healthy. That seems odd to say, but I mean, you've got 4 legit aces on top. Like, you have Shohei Ohtani returning to the pitcher's mound. Like, I keep forgetting that. Like, Blake Snell, Sasaki, Yamamoto. Sounds like Clayton Kershaw is going to be coming back. Glasnow. Oh, by the way, we're getting Shohei freaking Ohtani back as our pitcher. So, yeah, I think this team's got like 120-plus wins in them.
Yeah, you could argue that last season this team, especially from a pitching standpoint, was dealt its worst hand that it will have for the foreseeable future, and yet, oh my goodness, to eclipse 116 over the course of 162 games. I'm out simply because when that number was obtained, and you can talk about some great Yankees teams during that stretch, obviously the Seattle Mariners, but the game is played fundamentally differently to the point where I think, Tanner, right now, with the ability to shorten games to such an extent, I do believe that philosophically speaking, strategically speaking, that matters. It's played in a different manner. And even though LA is going to run away with the division, sorry, San Diego, run away with the division and probably eclipse last year's number of wins, an all-time mark, I'm not going to bet on that, bank on that, because obviously there are more aspirations to gain come postseason.
Yeah. I came up with one now. Sorry, go ahead, T-Bone. Give us your answer.
I'm out.
I gave you time.
Yeah. I'm out. I think they'll get close, and I think it will be a headline throughout the season. I think they'll get to like 110. Yeah. The reason that I am out, and we'll see, I do agree. I think they're going to win their division, and I think they'll win it ultimately pretty handedly. I think they're in, if not the best division, the second best division in baseball. Like, don't sleep on that Diamondbacks team. I love the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've got an unbelievable offense. I don't think they're going to lose a step with losing Christian Walker. They've got great pitching out. They've added Corbin Burns. I expect Jordan Montgomery to have a bounce-back season. And on top of the San Diego Padres, who you brought up, who almost eliminated them last year. Like, I think they're in one of the tougher divisions. I think they will miss out, but I think they will be a storyline for a while that they could get there.
So, came up with one. Thank you guys for giving me some time. In or out, both Broberg and Holloway sign a bridge deal with the Blues this offseason. And by bridge deal, I'm meaning
3-4 year deal.
3-4 year deal.
Oh, that's interesting. I will say out. I think Broberg will go long term. I wonder if the Blues will try and convince him to go long term, because everything that you've seen from Philip Broberg, and honestly everything you've seen from Dylan Holloway, there's nothing to think that it's flawed, right? There's nothing to say like, okay, sure, Dylan Holloway's playing really well, but that shooting percentage isn't going to sustain. Or you look at Philip Broberg and you go, this looks like a one-hit wonder. None of that is screaming off of the page. I do think they'll be more cautious with the Holloway side, just to say, okay, do it again, kind of like they did with Jake Neighbors.
Yeah.
Broberg, I can see where they look at it, they go, dude, this guy is a number one defenseman. As Ken Hitchcock said, those guys don't grow on trees. So I can see where they give him the long term, so I'm out.
Especially if they look like trees.
True.
I can't frame it any better than you did, but I want to remain optimistic. I will say insofar as these two came over basically at the same time from Edmonton, you were able to get that tandem together. You understand, you've identified, we talked about it earlier in the show, as two of the top 4 to 5 potential core pieces for this team now moving forward. It makes too much sense, but because it makes too much sense, I am just a little pessimistic on that regard. But why not? Let's go in here. Let's go in and be positive.
Here's why I'm out. I don't know if a bridge contract is what the Blues would want. I think they want long terms now. Because the salary cap, I was telling T-Bone this, Elliot Friedman had a piece that's like the report, at least from Alan Walsh, who is an agent. We've had him on the show before. He's like, in 2 years, the salary cap's going to be about $105 million. And you know what the Blues don't want to do? Go into a contract negotiations with the player when the salary cap is going up like 20%, because then they want more money in return. If I'm the Blues, let's get you locked up now so I know what that salary looks like. And as it goes up, I'm going to be like, this is smooth sailing. The Kyrou Thomas contracts look incredible if the cap's going up to $105 million. Imagine what takes place if you get those two guys locked up to 8-7-year deals that are at $7 or $8 million. Man, you are in a prime position to make some real moves when the cap goes up. So I'm out on this one. Bradford, what do you got?
Lots of love for LA during this edition of In or Out. Gentlemen, about an hour or so ago on ESPN.com, an article popped up regarding the future of one Matthew Stafford, Tanner. So Rams head coach Sean McVay evidently hoping to avoid some of the drag-it-out nature, for lack of a better term there, that certainly was a factor last offseason in the event that Stafford opts to return for another year, and presumably that will be the case with the Rams having a nice core on both sides of the football. In or out, Matthew Stafford is a top 8 to 10 quarterback next season.
I'm in. I don't think his game's going to take a significant step back. Stafford can play for another 3 to 4 years, I think. I think he's got that much still left in the tank. And I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't know that he's top 5 to 7 range, but you said 8 to 10, so I'm in. I think he is, and I think you're going to potentially see the Rams push next year because they know they're running out of time with Matt Stafford.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical because if you buy out Cooper Kupp, are you bringing in another wide receiver weapon asset? Because if you're just a one-trick pony, I think that could be dangerous with just Puka. But I can't doubt Matt Stafford's talent. So I'll say I'm in on this one because I think once you get past the top 5, it's a real open-ended conversation.
The arm certainly hasn't dropped off. I think you saw some tremendous balance during really the entirety of the season. And even if Kyron Williams isn't that guy to consistently approach 250 to 300 carries, you have a nice asset potentially to develop in the backfield too, in a Blake Corum. I'm curious, Tanner, do you think that Robinson, he had some nice moments during the postseason as well in the snow game versus Philadelphia, could be the sort of guy who actually develops into more of a 2 or 3? I know you still want to improve the position, but what else is it there right now to maybe replace Kupp?
Yeah, they don't have anything internally to replace Kupp, and that's why it's a fair question from Alex, because I like DeMarcus Robinson. He's not even there anymore.
What?
He's been gone for like 2 years.
Oh, Tutu. That's who I was thinking of.
Tutu's been there for a long time and just has like the one catch in a football game just to remind you that he's still there. I don't think they've got the guy internally, and I think they would have to draft somebody or they would have to look to free agency to go find that number 2. I don't know if they'd be in on T. Higgins because I think they'll want to pay Puka when his contract comes up, but DeMarcus Robinson, his ceiling is as a number 3.
All right, let's roll through these a little bit. In or out, at this time in 2028, Matt Holliday's contract will still be the largest contract the DeWitts have ever signed.
By 2028?
So 3 years from now.
Oh, man, that's a good one. I'll say in. I don't know where they would go for the bigger contract. I don't know if they're going to the market to do it. And I don't know if there's anybody internally yet that I would say that they would commit to do that to. So I'm in.
Yep, I'm in as well. I think it's going to be Holiday for a long time.
What was that, 120 million?
I think so.
Ish, if memory serves.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump the gun too much on this, but if you're talking about the span of the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, 120, if the trajectory remains the same, or we are that optimistic and bullish on Mason Wynn, you'd better be ready to pull that money out of the coffers, because it is going to cost that and much more to retain him in the Gateway City.
In or out, Binnington. Hofer finishes the regular season better than Binnington, but you ride Jordan Binnington in the playoffs of round 1. So Hofer better than Binnington in the regular season, better record, save percentage, but Binner's your guy in the playoffs.
I'm going to say out, and I think it's because I still think Benner's going to end up with a better regular season numbers. And of course, he'll be the guy you ride in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Regardless of what happens, I'm out. Binner's the guy in the playoffs.
I'm out. There's another gear to reach in the last couple of months of the regular season alone, and I don't really care what the surface statistics are at this point in time. I think that you will see that progressively as you edge closer to March and April. So the performance as well as the expectation of Binnington being the number one are going to be in unison.
In or out, Mason Wynn will steal 30 or more bases in 2025, along with 15 home runs and 65 RBIs. That is specific.
I like it.
So 15 home runs, 65 RBIs, and 30 bases.
What did he end up with home run wise last year?
12?
It sounds about
Is that right? 11.
No, he's right at 15.
He did get 15.
So I'm in on that.
He's projected for 13 home runs, 52 RBIs, and 10 stolen bases.
Yeah, I'm going to say out. I don't know if he'll get to 30 stolen bases. I think he'll be 20 to 25. I don't think he'll get to the 30 range.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. I also don't know if you're going to get 15 home runs again. I think pitchers approach him a little bit differently.
Yeah, the one about which I'm actually the most uncertain, the swipes, because we simply haven't seen that from this collection, honestly, of youngsters for the Cardinals. I know that he said at winter warm-up that he was pushing for that total of 30 to 35. Vic, as in Victor Scott, wants the 50-plus total, but I think he is more than capable of reaching the 15 dingers, even the 60 to 65 RBI range, but until proven otherwise, I want to see him get the opportunities to run wild.
Let's get to the junk drawer next here on 101 ESPN.
College basketball is on 101 ESPN.
If your heating and cooling system is over
Open up your 101 mobile app for your chance to win a signed Bennington Blues mini goalie mask.
What a save by Bennington.
It's a cool miniature mask autographed by Blues goalie Jordan Bennington.
Do I look nervous?
Check it out and get entered to win it right now, either online at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app, powered by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The junk drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Let's dive into the junk drawer, and as typical on this segment, I'd like to preface what I'm about to say by I don't want to get political.
No.
But did you guys see this thing from, I think it was in North Carolina? So what? There's video going around of this. It's a news story. Neighborhood camera shows man wearing satanic mask approaching homes with Bible verse. So, like, this guy was legitimately walking up and down a street holding a cardboard piece with a Bible verse that was about the apocalypse. And he's wearing like one of those satanic red devil goat masks. All black, red mask, and he's going up to doors and he's knocking and ringing on doorbells. He's not saying a word. He's standing there holding the sign, and then when somebody says something to him, he just stands for a good 2-3 minutes and then walks away. I watched this video about 7 times last night.
Couldn't sleep.
And I'm legitimately asking this, Steve. I know you're in an apartment, but Bradford, you own a home. You've got girls in the house with you.
Yes.
I have 4 of them. I asked my wife, I go, what do you do in this situation? Because you call the cops. Okay, fine. He's probably going to be gone by then.
Well, I'm not opening the door.
Well, of course you're not opening the door, but like, this is like one of the most frightening things in the world. And I frankly don't even want to ring doorbell because of this. I have one, by the way. Like, you have it for all of the packages, but like, life before ring doorbells, you wouldn't have known this was a thing. Like, look at this picture. This dude is just standing there with a goat mask.
You're welcome, audience.
Like, just in front of the door.
Yeah,
What do you do?
I don't. I mean, you just kind of stand by your door yourself, I guess, right?
No, you don't.
Well, I'm not opening the door.
No, I know. I think I get all of my family and lock them in a room.
That's another good one.
Because the world we live in, like, you have no idea what's going on in this circumstance. Like, the guy on the video, he talks to him. He's like, can I help you? Doesn't answer. Can I help you? Doesn't answer. And then the guy goes, what do you want? And the guy just turns around and walks away. Frightening as all hell.
Better have a panic room installed, I suppose.
Seriously.
This, honestly, okay, this is on another level, Alex. I agree. But honestly, I saw some stuff. I don't know about you guys in terms of collegiate atmospheres. But as far as a lot of these speaker circles were concerned, and yes, I can look at Mid-Missouri and attest to this. Sorry, BK. There was some stuff that went down almost along these same lines as well. It's just crazy as far as, but this one, I don't disagree with you. This is next level. It would be hard for me to immediately, in that moment, react in a rational but safe manner.
Like I know the Ring doorbell's good. These are one of those instances, where I wish I didn't have the Ring doorbell, because I don't need to see that.
Why not? If you didn't have the Ring doorbell, you'd probably open that door.
Or I don't answer it, and I never know that the person's standing there with a goat mask on.
But if somebody knocks on your door, you're probably going to answer.
Maybe.
Right? Do you purposely avoid?
No, yeah.
Not always.
I always avoid. Unless it's somebody that I know is coming over, I always avoid.
I guess it's fair. I mean, you would just probably, I don't know how, like, I have people like a hotel would.
Yeah.
So that's how I can see out my door. So I'm assuming either have that or a window.
I have like a glass window on it, so I can see. They can see in also, but like I don't go to the door.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, either way, you end up not avoiding the door.
I just saw this, and like the first thing I'm thinking of, have you guys seen the movie The Purge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where the guy like is just standing there with a mask on, and it's like, oh man, hell to the no. That's how you could scare the bejesus out of some people. With Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, how does Ollie manage this year, given where this Cardinals team is at, and A top 10 shortstop list came out from Major League Baseball Network. We'll get to that and if Mason Wynn can be in the conversation this upcoming year. All next here on 101 ESPN.
The Centene Community Ice Center, EMP Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. St. Louis Blues hockey can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with the First Community pre- and post-game show.
First Community Credit Union, calling St. Louis home for 90 years and powered by Scott Lee Heating Company.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Along with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario, BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So the Cardinals obviously in a very difficult position, I guess I should say, because they're wanting to refresh, but you have some contracts still on the books, some guys that are playing some specific spots, like Nolan Arenado, like Miles Michaelis, and it's not fully embracing the youth movement. So you're kind of stuck in between, which presents an interesting obstacle if you're Oli Marmol. How do you manage this upcoming year? Because not only do you have the trials and tribulations in front of you with this Cardinals team, but you don't have a contract beyond this year. And so Oli, who was at winter warm-up, and BK and Tanner were there this past weekend, talked about how managing changes based on where this team's at in their cycle.
There's times where, man, you want to develop that bench bat, and whoever that may be. Let's use Baker, for example. 30-minute conversation with him yesterday, and he said, man, my first run up here, I was so nervous coming off the bench. Like, I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm standing there, I'm anxious, I'm swinging at everything. Like, I couldn't even handle the pressure properly compared to how I handled it in AAA. He said, my second time, I was like, I'm just going to take him at bat. Like, I'm coming off the bench. If it goes well, great. If it doesn't, like, it's a regular at bat, right? So there's this big gap. Nothing about mechanics, nothing about, it was strictly how he's processing pressure, and that comes with opportunity. So there's times where I'll stay on line with your example of Gorman staying left on left. Gorman hits left-handers, okay? But there are opportunities to also develop the other side of it of someone experiencing coming off the bench and getting better at that. So you pick your spots depending on what's going on. I don't think there's just one answer of like, no, everyone's going to hit left on left and we're just going to let the kids play. Like, no, there's different ways to develop this.
So that's what in my opinion, main goal has to be this season if you're Ali Marmol. And I understand the looming contract conversation, and you know what's best to get a contract renewal. You have to win. But, man, if you're him, the sole purpose, it feels, of this season is to develop guys like the situation he painted with Luke and Baker. You've got to put guys in position to succeed this season, especially these younger players. You don't have a bench like you did this past year of Matt Carpenter and Brandon Crawford that you can go to in big situations. You know, if Nolan Arenado's here, he's going to be playing third base. That shouldn't diverge you from playing Nolan Gorman every single day and playing Lars Nootbaar every single day. This season has to be about putting all of these young players in a position to where they don't feel like Luke and Baker going into next year, to where they're confident when they step to the plate at some point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes, especially if Arenado's here. I think if Arenado's here, this is where it becomes a really difficult task for Oli Marmol, because we talk about that roster crunch that they have. It almost feels, I don't think it's as to the extreme, but remember in I think it was 2023, the year they ended up losing 90 games, they went into the season, I think it was with 5 outfielders, if I remember correctly. It was Carlson, it was Nootbaar, it was Walker. I can't remember who else they had. They had like 2 more that I'm forgetting about off the top of my head. But they had that crowded outfield to where they would play a game, okay, then they would be out of the lineup and they'd go to somebody else, and they continued to go through that process. I fear that could be something that they can run into this year if they don't move on from Nolan Arenado. But it is going to be interesting to see how Oli Marmol balances this, right? Because we heard Craig Berube say to, I think it was our show right after he got let go by the St. Louis Blues, he didn't believe at the NHL level that they could develop players while also trying to win. And I wonder how Oli Marmol is going to handle that, because his job is to win baseball games. Now, sure, he's got 2 years left on his contract, but his job is still to win baseball games.
Right.
What do you do when Nolan Gorman goes through his slumps again? Because it's going to happen, right? We know it's going to happen with Nolan Gorman. As big as I am on Jordan Walker having a bounce-back season, he's going to go through a slump at some point. How are you willing to let those guys go through that? You know, where is that balance of, okay, he's still got to be out there playing every day, but also, okay, we also have to be careful of not letting him just get too far down on himself and balance that out. Him talking about kind of the situational hitting there when he answered BK's question at winter warm-up about, well, hey, what do you do with like pinch hit situations when there are left-on-left situations? It was interesting to hear him say like, hey, Luke Baker develop as like a bench bat, because that's going to be the role for some of these guys. If they're going to be big leaguers, Luke Baker, it's going to be as a bench guy. If it's Thomas Ajayci, to me, it's probably going to be as a bench guy.
Maybe one of these outfielders, it's going to be a bench guy.
Sure.
Ciano, Victor Scott.
Sure, 100%. Like, they're not just balancing the guys that play every day. There's also that balance of how do we get Luke Baker enough at-bats and make him a guy that can make a big league career out of, hey, you're just going to come off of the bench. Or maybe you become a platoon hitter by starting off of as a bench role. And then, you know what? You just crush lefties, and now we put Luke Baker or Thomas Ajayci in the lineup. I'm fascinated to see how this goes, because it's one thing to say this. It's another if the season starts off slow. Like, if they start, I don't even remember what it was in 23. I think it was like 10 and like 19 or 10 and 20. Okay, if you start off that way, are we still going to hear the same tone of, hey, Jordan Walker, he's not hitting. You know, it's not been great offensively. Jordan Walker's still playing every single day, because that is what you have to do during the regional. You have to play him. It cannot be he's got to go down in the minors, or, hey, let's have him ride the pine for a couple of days. Right. Be interesting to see how Oli Marmol balances that.
Yeah, you have to push through. And, let me correct myself. He's got one more year after this year. For some reason, I thought this was his last year. He's going through 2026. So next year is his final year
like a guy
in this
that was
contract.
wishing over there.
No, it wasn't wishing. It was just bad information by me. I thought he signed that in 2023, not 2024. Bad mistake. Here's the thing. There's certain areas that I look at that you can't diverge away from the situation at hand. One is the catcher position. Let's say Ivan Herrera isn't defensively reliable you like, but the bat's playing. Good. Keep him in there. Figure it out. I don't need Pedro Pajes. Who's more in line with what the plan is of the future? It's Ivan Herrera. You can work on the defense. I don't need to worry about the bat. Or I don't need to worry about Pedro Pajes getting in. It's Jordan Walker, like you just mentioned. If he goes through 2 weeks of a cold streak, are you stepping away from it? Because you can't. You can't push away from something that you got to find a way to battle through. And then it's the second base position. And honestly, it's the biggest threat to Oli Marmol in terms of, hey, this guy's not working. We've got this one that actually works. Yeah. Because Gorman's Brendan Donovan. If Gorman's not working, guess what? Brendan Donovan's right here. If Herrera's not working, guess what? We've got Pedro Pajes, and we can always fall back on defense. Guess what? If Jordan Walker's not working, you know what we got? We got Michael Ciani. You can't fall back on we've got this. And I know winning is the most important thing. But to me, that takes a backseat to what the whole sole purpose of this season is. Yeah. The most important thing is developing these younger players into everyday ball players.
And that's why we keep reiterating the have to trade Arenado, because then it becomes a little harder to do well, I've got this piece on the bench that has to play, right? I have to get X amount of plate appearances for probably Burleson right now is the guy that probably gets pinched out. One of Burleson.
Or Donovan.
Or I was going to say Gorman. I assume Donovan's going to be in the lineup. Or Donovan, depending on what you want to do.
That's a good point.
But that's where they ran into 23. And now I have the 5 outfielders. Because remember, when they started 23, it was O'Neill, it was Nootbaar, it was Walker, it was Carlson. They also wanted to sprinkle in a little bit of Alec Burleson in the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they had 4 or 5 outfielders that they were constantly just kind of rotating in and out. Oh, Carlson went 0 for 3 today? Boom. All right, we're going to go to Nootbaar in right field. Oh, Jordan Walker was 0 for 3 today? Okay, well, now we've got Carlson who didn't play the last 2 games. Boom, we're going to go to Dylan Carlson. And they got stuck in that trap. And they admitted after the 2023 season, hey, that wasn't the path for us to go. Or it might have even been the deadline in 2023, where they said, hey, that wasn't the right idea. We needed to clear out some room. We just need to let this be, let these guys get their plate appearances and see if they can develop doing that. And, of course, when they were trying to win last year, trying to get back to the playoffs, what happened with Jordan Walker? Now, granted, he may not, I think it was best case scenario, they sent him down, but they convinced themselves, hey, we've got to win. Walker's not hitting. Boom, he's got to go down to the minor leagues. In theory, they've gotten rid of that, right? But again, the manager's job isn't necessarily we're going to develop these guys. Yeah. Hey, man, when you get to the big leagues, you're supposed to be ready, right? My job is to win baseball games. That's where it's going to be interesting with Oli Marmol. I do think Oli's the guy for this. I know nobody likes to hear that, and I know not a lot of people like Oli Marmol. I do think Oli, though, is the guy that now that he's got these younger guys in place, I think this team fits more of what he wants to be.
Well, and it's his opportunity to prove everybody wrong. Like, I mean, pro athletes, pro coaches, managers, they love the opportunity to prove people wrong. And this is it. Because if he comes out of this season with 85 wins, fighting for an NL Central title because all of these young players are developing and they're getting their lumps and they're going through their struggles, how can people push back against Oli? But if it goes the opposite direction to where you're not giving these guys chances and you're so focused on winning baseball games because you're worried about what next year's going to look like and none of the young players are developing properly, well, then everybody's going to continue the same tone that they've been having.
And someone from the 314 said, what if they just aren't good? Well, you know what?
Then you just found that out.
You just found that out, and you now have the answer.
Yep.
If Nootbaar, I will use Gorman. If Gorman still strikes out a ton, there is no more, well, we know we got to get these opportunities for Gorman. Hey, you know what Gorman just became? Maybe a bench guy.
Or a trade candidate.
Like, now, that's the nice part about going through a retool. Though there is a fair criticism if this team will be good. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but at least you're going to get answers, right? You're now going to know when Chaim Bloom takes over in 2026, he's going to be able to look at that roster and go, Gorman, not a part of the core. Walker is part of the core. Burleson, part of the core. Nootbaar, part of the core. Oh, this guy, not part of the core. That's the nice thing about doing this. And what we talked about yesterday about them getting stuck in the middle, they never really knew what they had in the young guys because they'd always look for a veteran to take over that spot for those plate appearances or those innings, depending on where they were looking.
One guy that I am kind of curious about because MLB Network had their top 10 shortstop list from last night. Number 1 on this list, here's the top 10. Gunnar Henderson, Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, Bobby Witt Jr., Mookie Betts, Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, Ellie De La Cruz, Willie Adames, Trey Turner. That's Major League Baseball Network's top 10 shortstops. Can Mason Wynn be in that conversation next year? There's only one guy, and frankly, I'm a little surprised that this guy's number 6 on this list. You look
Swanson.
Yeah, and what are we doing here? Like Dansby Swanson, really? But
he's good too.
I get it, man. He's probably a great guy, as they've been told.
4 WAR.
Makes sense. 4 WAR. What's it good for, T-Bone?
Amen.
I think that's the one that you're talking about. Like if Dansby Swanson's 6th on this list, Mason Wynn can crack the top 10, because in my opinion, Dansby Swanson would be 10th on this list rather than 6th. That's the guy you're pushing for, because Dansby Swanson's not anything sexy offensively. Defensively, he's really good, but I think Mason Wynn's better. But Mason Wynn's hurdle is going to be the first base position, because what doesn't look good is a bunch of errors to your name that aren't your fault if the first baseman's not catching the ball.
Yeah, I think it comes down for Mason Wynn. If he could put together a season like Swanson had in 2023, not really the RBI number, but if he could creep up his home runs, we talked about, hit 15 last year. If you increase that a little bit, get a little bit closer to 20, end up with a 244 average, or anywhere between 250, 270, about a 310, 320 on base, and you play Gold Glove level defense, that's how you get into the top 10. Now, it'll probably be where Swanson should have been, which is 10.
16 home runs, 66 RBIs, 242 batting average with a 98 OPS plus.
And
that was Dansby Swanson.
And I think he'll hit, I know, I'm shocked he was at this high on this list. Oof. I think he'll hit for a better average. Where I wonder what his on base will look like for Mason Wynn is, okay, will he start drawing more walks? Because he didn't necessarily do that. He's more of the slap hitter, hit 270, 280. If he adds the stolen base element, which we talked about and he talked about at winter warm-up, I can see a scenario where he ends up being fringe top 10. It wouldn't shock me next year if they do this on MLB Network and we go, Mason Wynn, number 10 on the top 10 shortstops in Major League Baseball.
Frankly, he should be, because Dansby, he was better than Dansby Swanson in almost every area last season.
Aren't you a little surprised by Correa's standing as well? I see no reason as to why Wynn wouldn't be able to push for that 6-7 territory. Now, last season, Correa's average jumped back up, but you're still talking about a small sample size or a small number of games played. He hasn't been the same player, I would contend, over the past few seasons. And the shortstop rankings, when you can quibble a little bit with, okay, Witt actually exists somehow behind a Lindor, but anybody within that range, we know that just how dynamic, of course, De La Cruz is. Adames is perpetually consistent. Same thing with Turner there. But when you're talking about anybody between 6 and 10 maxing out, I think that Wynn could definitely, best case scenario, challenge for that lower tier of the top 10.
So we'll see. But in my opinion, he could be a top 10 shortstop next year. If Dansby Swanson's in that top 10, Mason Wynn can absolutely be there. Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, it's the best segment of the week, believe it or not. You send us a scenario, we'll tell you if we believe it or not next. And we sing on 101 ESPN.
This is Zach Bolduc, and it's game day on your home of the Blues 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings as the NFL playoffs are underway, and you can play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. All you have to do is select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Looking at the Chiefs game this weekend, I'm going Kelsey more than 69.5 receiving yards, Allen more than half a touchdown, and Kareem Hunt more than 33.5 rush yards. $10 on that can win you 40+. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers as new Pick 6 customers play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my promo code 101WXOS. That's code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus award is non-trouble. Pick 6 credits expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Oh, Bradford, I know you. If it wasn't Thursday, you wouldn't have came in when we called.
That's
you.
true.
Guilty.
Bradford would have said no bleeping way. Blame it on BK for taking off. Say it, T-Bone.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
free.
On a wing and a prayer.
Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
No, I give Bradford. He didn't know. He didn't know.
Typically, all over the party.
Typically, the last couple of times he sings the whole way through. We didn't distinguish the part for him, but my man jumped in at the last end.
Nailed it.
And he just crushed that.
He nailed it. He didn't panic.
Bring it home.
BK couldn't do that. If BK missed out on a note, he'd be done.
He panics.
He can't even sneeze under pressure.
Yeah, he panics, and then he does his little bird thing. We all know what he
Bradford,
does.
if you ever do the bird thing,
we'll have
I'm
to
sorry,
kick you out of this
won't
group.
be back.
Understood.
Okay?
Understood. But although, let me just say something, though. Bradford has crushed the cowboy hats with the yeehaw on our roundups.
Really enjoyed that.
I'm convinced that he took one home because we can't find them.
I think you took all of them home. I think Bradford has roundups every night. He's crushed the believe it or not.
Going to leave that one alone.
I'll allow that one. All right, 314-399-9646, our Air Comfort Service text line. You can also send it over on our YouTube chat at 101 ESPN STL. You send us a scenario. We will tell you if we are going to believe it or not. We've already kind of given ours earlier with in or out, so we're going to switch this one up and go straight to the text line, T-Bone. Believe it or not, the Blues will regret Pavel Buchnevich's contract more than Kyrou or Thomas. I'm not believing this one. I know it's bad,
Calling
right?
Thomas a bad one?
No, I don't think any of them are going to be bad. And Joe's right. Like Pavel Buchnevich, whatever's happening right now this season, when Buch gets it right, he'll go on a hot streak. He did it in December. He was like one of the hottest players with Robert Thomas at the time. He'll get there. But with this cap going up to $105 million, your top three players, regardless if you believe that they're superstars in the NHL, one of them's got 100-point potential, one of them's got 40-goal potential, and one of them is one of the best two-way players in the game when he's right. Those guys are making a combined $24 million for the next 7 years. Do you know what Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon are going to be making next year if they re-sign Rantanen? Those two are going to be making a combined $26 million. You've got 3 guys at 24. So no, you're not going to regret it. It would significantly have to be bad for you to regret Pavel Buchnevich.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it either. I don't know if there's going to be a time where you regret the contract extension, but I do wonder if there's going to be a time where you look at it and go, man, that did not end up the way we thought. Because of the cap going up, it's going to be hard for you to look back on that contract and go, man, that was a mistake because of what you just explained. Right. I was this way when it happened, so I'm not doing like the, I've seen this happen. I would have traded Booch when he was a pending UFA at the trade deadline.
Depending on what you could have got back in return, I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
Because there were names available that you're like, man, you go after this.
And he hadn't really, as good as Booch had been, he still hasn't lived up to what he did in that first year here in St. Louis, right? He's been good defensively, but the offensive numbers haven't been there. He had some injury concerns at times.
Like, I don't know what the trade proposal was, but the reports were the Blues were interested in Martin Necas from the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
That's one of them that I can understand. Like, if the possibility was there, you would have considered it.
Yeah, I agree. But I do agree, not going to believe it, that you'll end up looking back on that deal going, bad contract.
It's all relative, right? I can't necessarily believe this one. It's relative because you're lumping Thomas and Kyrou into the same conversation and saying you're going to regret the Buchnevich move more. I can't say regret. Can you second guess, particularly given the way that this season has started, particularly given that you have now been out at wing for a considerable period of time, too, after having to begin the campaign at center? Yes. But looking at it down the road, what he offers to you as a two-way player, I just don't think that regret is the operative word here.
So how about this one from Hector Gomez, who covers a lot of Major League Baseball, specifically like in the Dominican, Puerto Rico, those types of areas. Source: the Blue Jays have an offer out to Pete Alonso. It's a competitive offer, and they believe they will land him. Believe it or not, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is traded before the start of this season.
I think it means they're going to lock up Guerrero Jr.
And play him as the DH?
Third.
Oh, really? Put him back at third?
They put him at third for the final, I think it was like 10 games last year. I think their hope is they want to build a competitive team, and it's one of two things. It's either, hey, this is the last dance with Vlad Guerrero Jr., and hopefully we can try and be competitive with Vlad, Pete Alonso, Santander. Yeah. Or this is the classic, hey, Vlad, dude, look, we got the polar bear, we got Santander. Hey, be a part of the group.
And
Come
he
on,
says, I don't want to be
extension. And he goes, all right, $400 million. They go, all right, it's the last dance. I don't think they're going to trade him. I think they're trying to build around Vlad Guerrero Jr. for this upcoming season. Whether that is beyond that, I don't know, but I expect he's going to be a Blue Jay.
Let me ask you guys this then, because I didn't realize that they were trying to put him back at third base, which makes a ton of sense. Better team over the next 5 years. Toronto Blue Jays with Guerrero Jr. and Pete Alonso and really Santander, or the New York Mets with Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto?
I'll go Mets because I think the Mets will become the destination, the second destination behind the LA Dodgers to go to.
Yeah, and this is more of a gut feeling, but I trust the Mets to either develop the younger pitching or secure more veteran pitching outright as well to help complement the offensive cast. And I'm forgetting the notion of Guerrero actually being moved. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that his stint, an abbreviated one at third base, went much better than Devers in Beantown last year. I digress. But also, we're forgetting about one more ride, perhaps more than that as well. When you think about the offensive core for this team relative to his past production, has Guerrero's production been down in each of the past 2 seasons? Yes, it has. But you're bringing in potentially an Alonso here. Santander has been nails over the past year plus in the power department. And we're forgetting that just a year plus ago, Bo Bichette was held in extremely high esteem. Why would we not think that there's at least a great bounce back opportunity there? The lineup is good. I worry about the pitching because even Gossman, the presumptive number one, his stuff has dipped perilously too. So you're going to have to outslug everybody.
Believe it or not, there will be an NFL playoff team that loses by double digits this weekend.
2 games.
I think these are going to be close games. I think Buffalo's going to beat Kansas City, but as we've seen, even if Kansas City does win, they don't win by more than 2, but more than 10. So
they only win by 3 points.
Yeah, and then the NFC Championship game, I think Jane Daniels is going to play well. I don't know if Washington's going to be able to stop Saquon Barkley, but I trust their offense is going to put up points like they've done so far in the playoffs. So I'm going to say not believe this. I think they're going to be both very close.
I can't believe it either, although actually I have more reservations about Washington's ability to stay in the game for all 4 quarters than I do necessarily, for Buffalo versus KC there. Not that I'm overly confident in Jalen Hurts, one of our primary subjects from the 11 o'clock hour, but rather the degree to which Barkley is bound to gash that run defense. I still think it's highly suspect on the part of Washington. Daniels can only do so much. We're finally going to see some turnovers, I believe, in the fourth quarter because you're going to be playing catch-up somewhat.
Let's go final one here. Believe it or not, the Blues will beat the Golden Knights tonight and then lay an egg against Dallas on Saturday.
I hope not. I'm going to be at the game on Saturday.
I will believe that they beat the Knights tonight. I just told the guys during the commercial break, it's Ilya Samsonov in net for Vegas tonight, so they're going the different goaltender just like the Blues are with Joel Hofer. Bet the over in this one. Samsonov gives up like 4 goals per game. So bet the over on this one. I don't know if they lay an egg against Dallas. I think the egg is going to happen against Vancouver, which cannot happen, by the way. Like that game, you cannot lay an egg in. That'd be my concern.
Would an OT loss be considered an egg?
Okay. I think an egg is Utah.
Yeah.
I think an egg is Buffalo. I
Come
think
out and you're like not competitive in the first 20 minutes.
And frankly, if you lose to Dallas, I mean, Dallas is a pretty good team. So I can't look at it as an egg if you stay competitive. If you get shut out 7-0, I can look at that as an egg.
Yeah.
The eggs have been for the Blues this season. When they need the win, it's a must win. That's where they don't show up.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it. I don't know if they beat the Stars on Saturday because you're right. The Stars are a really good team. I just don't know if they're going to lay an egg. I think they're going to keep it competitive. It's the Hall of Fame night, right? They're going to be honoring the guys that are going into the Blues Hall of Fame this weekend. Like, it would be very disappointing to come out and lay an egg when there's going to be a big crowd on hand. So I'm not going to believe it. I don't know if they beat the Stars, but I definitely don't think that they lay an egg.
I think there's a chance to go on a little bit of a run, which tell me if you've heard that one before from me, but it really comes down to tonight against Vegas, which they've had 2 days off. They've been back in St. Louis. They flew back the night the night of that Blues game on Monday. They flew back, so they've been here for 2 days.
That's tough. They didn't get to enjoy Vegas?
No, but they were there on Sunday. They got to enjoy it. You enjoy pre-Vegas, and then you come home. You don't want to go post-Vegas.
That's fair. I think when I went to Vegas, I spent one too many days there.
Yeah, I didn't sleep also every time I went to Vegas. Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. Speaking of the Blues, what needs to happen for this team to force Doug's hand at the deadline? We'll get to that and one player who has fallen into untouchable conversations. That's next on BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Onder Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com. 101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. And every month during the season, you can register to win tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Enter to score free Blues tickets now at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 app. Brought to you by Ted Drews, serving original frozen custard since 1929.
That's SwissAirSTL.com.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Round 2 looms for Blues and Golden Knights. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns, and this Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. On the heels of a Monday's 5-4 shootout win over Vegas, St. Louis has a rematch tonight. The game coverage begins at 7 o'clock with pregame at 6 on your home of the Note 101 ESPN. Jim Montgomery expected to trot out the same lineup from that initial contest, including defenseman Philip Broberg, who was back in a practice setting today. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
So what needs to happen for Doug Armstrong to have his hand forced at the trade deadline? And obviously we're talking about buying, not selling. With Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. So we're still, March 7th, I believe the trade deadline is. You're still a little over a month away from the trade deadline in the NHL, and there's still a lot of games. I think there's like 12 or 13 games that still needed to be played before that. They've got the 8 games, 4 Nations tournament, and then about 4 or 5 before you hit the NHL trade deadline. And I think a lot of the reaction, T-Bone, that I've heard from people is, oh, this team's got to go on a big win streak if Doug Armstrong's going to buy. This team's got to reel off 7 wins out of their next 10 if they want Doug Armstrong to buy. I have a little bit of a different opinion on that. I think Doug Armstrong is going to buy regardless of a team going on a win streak. If they are around 500 when you get to that trade deadline, if they're in the race, I think Doug Armstrong is going to buy no matter what. It's not so much of what the team is doing, it's how close are they to the playoffs. Because all of the moves they've made from the offseason up until the Cam Fowler trade has been, hey, we believe we could compete for a playoff spot. And they've gone through some bad lulls. I mean, they've been through it where they lost 3 in a row, 3 straight times in a matter of 15 games. Like, that was under Drew Bannister. They went out there, they brought in a defenseman, they've hired Jim Montgomery. So I was kind of curious to say, okay, when Doug Armstrong has bought at the trade deadline, what were the team's records going into that trade deadline? So the last 2 times was when they traded for Nick Leddy in the 2021-2022 season. And then it was the 2019-2020 season where they traded for Marco Scandella. I'm not going to consider Michael Del Zotto buying at the deadline.
What?
Sorry to the Stanley Cup champion, but we're going to pretend that one didn't happen. And then otherwise, you're talking about a couple of sellings or standing pat. So back in 2020, when they traded to Montreal for Marco Scandella, remember that was the Jay Bouwmeester where he was retired. The Blues only won 5. They went 6 wins out of 18 games. If you're going to segment them off into win stretches, they won 5 of 10, and then leading into the trade deadline, they only won 1 of 8. They traded for Marco Scandella. They reeled off a 6-game win streak. And then you fast forward to the 2022 trade deadline when they traded Oscar Sundqvist, Jake Wallman for Nick Leddy. They went 15-9-4. They won 6 of 10, 7 of 10, and in the last 9 games going into the trade deadline, they won 2 of 9. I don't think this is a matter of the Blues reeling off a 7-game win streak if they're going to actually go out there and look for something that helps them now. I think what this is going to be is, do you stay where you're at? Do you stay in the hunt of this thing? And what's your weakness going into the trade deadline? Because if they realistically can acquire something that doesn't cost them a lot, think Jake Wallman and Oscar Sundqvist for Nick Leddy, think, I don't even remember, it was draft picks for Marco Scandella. He'll make the move. The question's going to be, what's the price going to be, and is it worth the price?
Yeah, I'll be interested to know what he see what he decides to do, because I understand what you're saying with those teams and how they had some scuffles going into the trade deadline. But correct me if I'm wrong. Both those teams felt like locks to be playoff teams going into that season.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the 2019-2020 season, that was the one that was paused because of COVID.
Yeah,
and that
they
was
were
the
one
year,
of the best teams in the NHL
that was the
year.
year, that Jordan Binnington was an all-star. I think they had 3 all-stars on that team. You still had Alex Pietrangelo. Yeah, you finished that year with 94 points in first place. And then the 2021-2022 season, that was the one where you got third place with 109 points.
Yeah, and I felt like we thought that they were going to be a playoff team. Like, going into that year, there was no question. It was, hey, Blues a playoff team. We'll see what happens when they get to the playoffs.
Right.
And that's where it feels different, is I understand what the organization was. I don't know if the organization felt like, hey, we are guaranteed, lock ourselves in, we are a playoff team, or that was, we think we're a playoff team this year, and that's where it changes. I do agree, though, with your sentiment of, hey, if Army thinks he can improve the team and he can find a way to do it and not have to give up a ton, he definitely will do that. Like, I don't know what it's going to cost to try and upgrade that third-line center spot, but I don't think they're going to want to put their first-round pick in play this year because it's really the only pick they have until I think it's round 4 or 5.
Right.
So I don't think they want to give that up. Also, just because of the fact of the matter, it's possible they don't even make the playoffs, which bumps that pick up even higher if you do move on from it. I think long as the Blues are kind of in this spot, they will be pushing. That I agree with, because they're only a point back right now of the Calgary Flames. And look, I get it. The Flames have 3 games in hand on you. I don't look at that. I don't look at that Flames team and go, we can't catch them.
Yeah.
I don't look at the Canucks and go, we can't leapfrog them. I'm not too worried about the Utah Hockey Club right now behind you. I look at that last spot being up for grabs, and I think if Army sees that, even if they're out of it, even if they scuffle, say they lose 5 of the next 8 going into the 4 nations, forget what happens at the prior to the trade deadline. I still think Army's going to say, it's better for us to invest in this team because we want to make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, and that's what it's going to come down to when you're in the thick of things. And it's going to be a trade like Nick Leddy or Marco Scandella. You're going to get a guy who's a UFA. And think of what, like the Marco Scandella, you gave up a 2nd and a 4th round pick. You don't have the assets to do that. You got a 5th round pick, and then obviously future drafts you could give up. But the Nick Leddy one, I think, is a perfect example. Their weakness was defense, and they said, we need to get help. They did trade a 2nd round draft pick in the upcoming draft. But they traded Jake Wallman and Oscar Sundqvist, a young player that didn't fit into their timeline. You could go down the list of a couple of different guys on this team that might fall into that. And Oscar Sundqvist, who was a veteran that just wasn't fitting into their plans. And it was something they didn't want to give up, but they said, well, we need to fill that hole. Like, I brought up Taylor Hall a lot. I could see this Blues team looking at Taylor Hall and saying, this isn't going to cost us an arm and a leg. He's a UFA. He's a top-line winger or a top 6 winger for us. Why not at least take a chance on this? And if he's good, great. We'll talk about what the future holds. If he's not, then we walk away from it. We didn't give up much.
Yeah, one thing that I do wonder where they will run into having problems is the fact that they don't have
draft
a 2nd,
picks.
a 3rd, a 4th. Yeah, they don't have the draft picks for this year.
Yeah.
Now, maybe somebody will take a 2nd-round pick for the upcoming season or the year after that.
Typically, teams don't care about that as much because they haven't done any scouting on that. And they don't have a 2nd-round draft pick until 2028.
Yeah, so that's where it gets tough, is if you don't want to give up that 1st-round pick, and I don't think you're in a spot really to do that.
No.
But you don't have a 2nd, you don't have a 3rd, and as you said, you don't have a 2nd until 2028. What do you have to put on the table
You've
right now?
got a 5th and 6th in this year's draft, and then next year you got a 3rd, 4th, 2 5ths, a 6th, and a 7th.
Yeah.
And it costs less if you're willing to eat more of the contract, I guess, on the player that you're acquiring. Like if you're Chicago and you don't have to eat 50% of it, maybe it costs you only a 5th-round pick. That's where it really comes down to it. But I did just find that interesting when you look at kind of the history of Doug Armstrong. The team doesn't have to be in an 8-game win streak. Frankly, when they were on an 11-game win streak, they didn't really do anything at that trade deadline. Again, sorry, Michael Del Zotto. But like where they've been in the past, they've recognized a weakness and they've said, all right, let's see what we can go up there and upgrade with if we don't have to give up a lot.
Depends on what everybody else does around you, because I did mention, like, you look at Calgary. I don't think you can look at the Flames and say we can't catch them, even though they have 3 games in hand and it is just 1 point. But
and they're
say
not
they did
win
those 3 games.
And they're not going to be upgrading at the deadline either.
Sure.
They'll be standing pat, if anything.
Like, they're not a team that you look at and I say, okay, I'm worried about we can't catch them. But I don't think this team can go into the deadline struggling, because I think if they are, and maybe he doesn't trade assets. He certainly is not giving anything up to help improve this team.
I guess the question is, where are they struggling at? Because if they're still struggling, you know what I mean? Like, they were struggling at those past trade deadlines because they didn't have somebody that filled that void for them. They needed a top pair defenseman to go in there and play.
Those teams, like I said, felt like locks for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's even an argument, like, you can fix whatever I'm going to use third line center as just the spot because it feels like the one that they will upgrade. I mean, we've talked about a winger, but let's just use third line center. If you look at that and go, okay, we really need a third line center. Yeah, right now we don't have a ton of assets because we've given up quite a bit already. And we're looking at this going, okay, well, if we really upgrade the third line center, do I have that much faith in this team that hasn't won 3 games in a row, still the only team in the NHL not to do that, and we've lost, say, 5 of the last 8 going to the deadline? Am I really going to look at a team on the outside looking in and going, yeah, it's time to commit more to that?
Mm-hmm.
I could see then when an Army says, hey, you know what? We're not in a playoff spot. It's time to maybe not pull the plug. Let's just sit pat. Yeah. It's better for us to sit pat and just see if they can figure this out rather than continue to just throw assets at the problem for a team that, let's be honest, doesn't have Stanley Cup aspirations.
Yeah, and I think if you're the Blues, here's how I would view the threat factor for St. Louis in that playoff spot. I would have Utah being number 1. Utah is the team that if I'm the Blues, I'd be the most worried about because you play them 2 more times. They've got 2 games in hand on you, and they've beaten you every single time you've played them the last 2 seasons. Vancouver would be number 2 on that list, but until they trade one of Miller or Pettersson, I'm not as scared. And Calgary would probably be 3rd on that list because you've already got the tiebreaker against them, and they've been a 500 hockey team all season long. So we'll have to wait and kind of see. And again, Curbs put this out. The Blues don't play that many games over this next 3-week stretch going into the Four Nations tournament. Vancouver and Calgary by that Four Nations tournament will be within 1 game of the Blues. So those games at hands will disappear, and you'll have a better idea of where the Blues are at. Again, they're in action tonight at 7 o'clock against Vegas. First Community Credit Union pregame at 6. We'll rewind it next year on 101 ESPN.
It's an NFL Championship Sunday on ESPN. Game 1, Eagles and Commanders. Game 2, Chiefs and Bills. Coverage gets underway Sunday morning at 11. The NFL lives on 101 ESPN. TMA? Then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com.
The TMA Listener of the Month Club is quenched by Milagro Tequila. Welcome to a brighter side of tequila with Milagro Tequila.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Let's rewind it here on BK and Ferrario with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns. If you missed anything from the show today, you can check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. Shea for Door Company is who brings us that podcast, and also the easy-to-use 101 ESPN app, which is presented by Dobbs Tire and Autos. That was weird tossing it to myself. That was weird.
Yeah, didn't like that.
I didn't do well for Shea for Door Company.
Ready.
You were. Let's try it again. You could always check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Brought to you by
Shea for Door Company.
All right, that's how we're going to do this one. And again, the 101 ESPN app brought to you by Dobbs Tire and Auto Center. So we'll rewind it with what we opened up today, talking about the Blues in this stretch. Once again, a critical stretch. 8 games remaining before the Four Nations tournament. They got great news earlier today with no injury to Philip Broberg, who went down at practice yesterday and, of course, is expected to play tonight, according to Jim Montgomery. But taking on this Vegas Golden Knights team, T-Bone, where are you at in terms of the level of must-win for this tonight against Vegas?
I would say it's up there. I don't think it's as high as like when they were playing the Calgary Flames, for example, because it was such a big 4 points, I guess it was. But yeah, I mean, you want to take care of business. Look, you got 6 of the final 8 games here at home. Sure, I think 5 of the 8 are against playoff teams. But you're going to have to beat some of them and start. I still think they're going to have a snowball moment where they go like on a win 5 of 7 kind of run. And Vegas is the team to beat right now, right? They're going through it. They've been struggling. I know Bruce Cassidy said something like, I think we're 1 shift away. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Let's make that 1 shift wait a couple days.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe next
I think
next
they
game.
win. I think they win tonight. I think Hofer plays well. I think you're going to see a bounce-back game from Buchnevich to where maybe he gets bumped back up with Thomas.
Yeah.
I think Blues win. I'll go 3-1 final.
I like that one. I'm saying a 4-3 final score because I think the over is going to hit with these two guys in this one. Supposed to do the over on that. Well, we've got pregame coverage for you tonight at 6 o'clock. Puck drop with Curbs and Joey at 7. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 11. Fastlane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers back with you here with another jersey giveaway. This one is awesome. Jordan Kyrou signed jersey, the home blue, and it's a ladies cut. Nice, sleek, sharp. One you're going to love for your collection, and all you have to do is go to 101ESPN.com or visit 101 ESPN, the mobile app. Register now to win that one-of-a-kind signed